Coming up on F'ing Up the Ineffable.
There are things that were bad that happened that we overcame, and sure, you get better at dealing with those types of things. But that doesn't mean that you want your kids to go through those things.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It's like that whole thing. There's a meme that kind of really solidified this next level of more clarity to me, which was, so you went through some trauma when you were growing up. I feel sorry for you for that. Why the fuck would you want your kids to have to do that?
Right.
Like, just look at it from that perspective. Isn't it better if they don't have to do that? Like, isn't that just better? You know?
Absolutely. And, I do get that you can grow from circumstances. But to your point, not everybody is going to grow. And it's really risky. It's like, you wouldn't do that on purpose. Now,
yeah, it's like, we were talking about this the other morning, actually. There's a very good analogy to this. It's like, when I was younger, like I love Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
Right. And when I was younger, I would watch the movie Conan the Barbarian, and that whole initial, montage where he's pushing the fucking wheel and he gets bigger and stronger and tougher and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's how you do it. Like Rocky drinking the fucking raw eggs, yeah, man, that's how you do it. When you really want it. That's how, you know what I'm saying? And it made him into this really strong, tough guy. No, it turned him into a fucking psychopath is what it did. Like Conan the Barbarian's a goddamn psychopath. Like he just fucking kills people. That's what he does. Like, it didn't make him a better person. It made him a demonstrably worse person. Right. Yes, he's a tough, worse person. That isn't better.
Hello, everyone.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Mike. We're experts in some things, such as IT, which we'll probably never discuss.
We're published authors with over 20 books.
Wait, we are? Which ones did I write?
We're musicians who played on albums and TV.
And developers who have written software used by literally millions of people.
Wait, really? I have?
Over the years, we have had in-depth conversations about everything from theoretical physics
to the nature of consciousness
to why Marvel is way better than DC.
Is it though?
And we thought maybe you'd like to listen in. Trust us, we're really interesting people. And smart.
And don't forget good looking.
And we're effing up the ineffable. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things that I think we originally thought we weren't going to touch on, because we've kind of had this when we first started this podcast. We said we don't want to get too political. We want to try to keep this down to facts and science, and and in some ways really kind of expand people's ideas of thinking about things. And I don't want to change that. I still think that it's important that we talk about facts and we talk about the reality of things, and not, we don't dive into, we tend not to go into, I feel this way, I feel that way. Like, we try to really look at what is real and not what is just, so much of politics gets into ideology, and it's hard to argue ideology with anybody, right? But one of the things that's got completely intertwined with politics over the last, say, 15, 20 years is money. And something that you've heard a lot of over, again, the last 15 or 20 years, it's always been there, but it's something that has gotten a lot worse lately, is the idea of wealth inequality. And kind of coupled with wealth inequality is you start to hear a lot of people really either worshiping or completely deriding billionaires. That you have the idea of billionaires are evil or billionaires are my hero, depending on who you talk to.
Sure.
So what we're talking about today is, what exactly is wealth inequality? Why do we say there's an inequality? What kind of impacts is that having on our society? And what about those people that are at the very top or even at the very bottom, but those billionaires that we're talking about, the ultra rich people, what's happening in that space, and why do they get derided so much? Why do people say billionaires are evil, or why do they become like subjects of hero worship in some cases? So take it away, Brian. What do you think about this to start with? Where do you want to start?
So I think we need to first start by separating something. I think Americans in particular, probably because we're, in my opinion, pretty poorly educated, but Americans in particular tend to conflate political structures and economic structures. So you will see people go, especially on the right, go, we're democracy. We're not socialist. Not realizing
or free market, you're right.
Not
capitalistic.
Yeah, well, you're right. They're not realizing they're conflating a political system, democracy, with a economic system, which is socialism. Socialism is an economic system, and you can be a democratic society that uses a socialist economic system.
And there's possible. Even literally something called democratic socialism, which is what sits kind of in that middle area where you still are doing things democratically, but a large portion of the needs of people is met in a socialistic fashion, at least the minimum needs.
Right. I mean, I think when you get down, the reason I think this is important is because the way you govern people is orthogonal to the way you control money. So you could have, for example, a theocracy, okay, where everything is controlled by religion that is still free market.
Sure.
Okay. Because that's what the U.S. is kind of trying to go into, it looks like. Okay. So you can do that. You can take different political systems and bolt them on to different economic systems. Yeah. So I just want to separate that. And then I want to kind of different, because I think this is going to come up a lot. So I think we need to do like a really basic differentiation between three core economic systems. You've got, capitalism, you've got socialism, you've got communism. And in America particularly, those three two of those get demonized quite hard, and one of them gets worshipped. And I don't believe that is the correct way to think about it. But I also don't want to go completely hard over to the other side that says, democracy is always bad or capitalism is always bad.
Right. So I wonder if we can just put some simple, and I know that they're very complex systems. I don't want to, but without going into an hour dissertation on each of those, let's just give kind of an simple example of each.
So that's what I was getting to. So I think a real easy way of thinking about this is that in capitalism, anybody can be rich. Okay, that's the core principle, is that anybody, given sufficient good ideas, good luck, good funding to the right thing, good enough effort, you can potentially be rich.
Right. I think the idea behind democracy is that the market...
capitalism.
Sorry, capitalism. You're right. See, I even did it.
Yeah.
Capitalism is that the market decides.
Right.
So if you have a good enough idea, then people will want to buy whatever it is that you're producing or whatever service you have, and that in turn you can make money off of that. And if it's bad ideas, then people don't choose it. And that becomes the backbone for,
that's kind of the logical structure.
That is. So there's some flaws there, and I'm sure we'll get into those.
I'm not gonna tear them apart right here. Right. I just want to give the basic idea. So the second thing to look at would be socialism. Let's go communism. Communism is a little easier. So we can go communism, and communism, the core idea of it is no one can be rich.
Right. Communism is basically, if you think of a commune, that's kind of the words have the same root, right?
Yep.
Is that everybody is working for the good of the people.
Right.
So no matter what you do, you do not get the fruits of your labor. You get your portion of the fruits of everyone's labor.
Right. And then your final type is socialism. And socialism is basically anybody can be rich, but nobody can be poor. Okay?
Right.
So the core idea of socialism is that there is a bottom level that everyone sits on, and no one goes below that. And that bottom level is you're not poor. That bottom level is you can survive, right?
Right.
You have everything you need to live your life in a dignified manner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can still be rich, if you develop said great ideas or what have you. You can still be rich, but you can't be poor. Okay.
Right.
Now, there's flaws with all three of these systems, but I'm going to say right off the bat, all three of them, their biggest flaw is the same flaw. Okay, it's corruption in all three. It's the same fucking flaw. Okay,
right. It's presented in different ways.
Right,
but
and
yes.
it can be a little easier, a little harder in each of these systems, depending. But in the end, they all can end up at the same place. So this idea that that capitalism is the greatest thing on earth and these other two ideas are the worst thing is pretty flawed, because we've never seen any of the other two done in a manner that we have seen socialism done in a manner that was productive, but we've never seen communism anyway done in a manner that was productive.
Now, the other thing is you were talking about separating the government or your political ideology from your economic ideology, but you can't really do that with communism, because in communism, the only way that you can enforce the structure of everybody contributing to the fruits of all and nobody taking any for their own is to enforce that through some sort of governmental control, which is what every
that's true of all of them, though. I would freely admit that I have not heard of a situation in where, no, that's not true either. I believe the CCP is technically still communist. And their system, that's interesting. So yeah, I think they've divorced the communistic political ideology from the economic ideology, because there's both sides of that. Like the Chinese are communist run, I believe, still I think they kind of portray it as a republic or something, but it's actually communistic. But the ideology is actually communistic. But they've changed their economic structure to something that much closer resembles capitalism.
Right. Right.
With a lot of state funding, like capitalism with a bunch of state funding, basically. But
but I was saying it the other way around, that you can't enforce economic.
I understand. I understand that.
Okay.
I'm saying, I will freely admit I've never heard of that done.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm willing to admit it can't be done.
Okay.
Because I can kind of envision a system where you have one part of government that is responsible for the big thing that you give to government is the ability to enforce capital punishment. So you have one part of the government that is responsible for, say, the military and making sure the laws are enforced. And then you have another part of government that's making sure that the economic system runs correctly. And I can see how a system of kind of checks and balances can exist there, to where I think you need a third party, but you have one of the parties checking that party checking the economic party, which checks the first party again. I can see how something like that might work, but I'm not a political scientist. You're not a political scientist. We don't know what the fuck we're talking about. Like we just read shit. You know what I'm saying? So we're trying to have an intelligent discussion about something that we, to some degree, we're not experts in. So I think you could probably find an expert who could probably blow holes in both sides of this. But I guess, the core problem in all of these systems really is the corrupting influence of money and power. Like, because an economic system is really all you're really looking at is we're trying to find a logistical way, preferably a just logistical way to apportion resources to people.
Right. So I guess, what's behind capitalism is that you get what you earn. Right. So
well, that's the idea. Yes.
Well, right. Exactly. That's where I wanted to go, is that, the idea behind it, the things that most people will look at and say that they think that capitalism is great because you reap the fruits of your own labor. And that you get all of them, or except for what taxes are taken out, and a lot of people argue against taxes too. That's a whole different topic. Although I do want to touch on something about taxes later, but that is the idea behind it. So just kind of getting into one of the flaws, but it's also one of the things that is contributing to inequality in the U.S. is that the goal for many, you describe this idea of you have a good idea and you get rewarded for it because other people see it's an idea and they're willing to invest in it, whether it be buying your product or service or whatever it is, right? But quickly it becomes less about the striving for a great idea and more it becomes about striving for the money. So, if you look at, and I'm just going to throw an example out there, but if you look at something like the airline industry, then, we actually went, and I heard this the other day, blew me away because I didn't realize it was this quick. From the time that Orville and Wilbur Wright flew their first plane out on the Outer Banks of North Carolina to the first commercial flight, how many years was in between those? You want to take a guess?
I think it was like 15, I want to say.
11.
Yeah.
11 years between the first rickety-ass flight on the Outer Banks dunes to their first commercial flight. Yeah. So somebody took that idea and said, you know what, we can charge money for this, right? Yep. And I absolutely, I am not suggesting you should be able to fly anywhere in the world for free. I'm not trying to say that at all. But it's at that point, it was one of these things where we have an idea. We think people would pay to do this, to participate in this service, and it's become one of the hugest moneymakers for any companies ever.
Sure, yeah.
Commercial flight. I mean, there are, I don't even know how many people, but it's tens of thousands of flights every day across the world. But the problem is that when you become more focused on the revenue or profit that you're making from whatever you're doing and less about the great idea, less about the people who are buying your product or service, is that it's easy to cut corners. It's easy to say, you know what, we can operate these flights cheaper if we don't perform these safety checks, or we can cram more people into the same plane if we just push the seats closer together, or any number of things that happen.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of getting into some flaws here. I don't know that I want to dig in so heavily to the flaws just yet. If I can stop that right now. There was something kind of you said earlier. I'm trying to kind of remember. So you I just kind of wanted to drill in on the idea that it's kind of meritocratic, because I think that is the core principle behind capitalism, is that you have an idea, it's a good idea, you come up with a business around that, you get rewarded for having that idea.
Right.
The problem is that works fine if you're a regular dude for the most part. When you get into something more complicated that requires lots of people's buy-in to do it, now the meritocracy goes almost completely away. Because just take the current situation where we have, say, Walmart, okay, which sells products. And to sell those products, they need people in the stores stocking those products, putting labels on the products, cleaning up messes for the products, making sure people don't steal the product, all this kind. You need managers all throughout. You need security. There's a lot. You need IT people. There's all kinds of stuff, right? Yep. The lowest worker at Walmart makes something like 600 times less than the CEO does.
Yeah.
The CEO of Walmart, I don't know I don't know if it's one of the Waltons still, or if it's probably some other dude. But this is from an economist, because I got this from Freakonomics. So this is actually from an economist. CEOs on average have less than a 10% impact on the company. Okay?
Right.
So yes, the CEO is moving a lot of things. 10% of a big company like Walmart is a lot, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But they don't deserve 600 times what the lowest labor worker is. And the lowest labor worker in Walmart actually makes so little that they're on lots of government assistance. So effectively, the United States people are subsidizing the CEO of Walmart and all of the stockholders of Walmart every fucking year.
Yeah, and I think you're starting to get into what the real crux of a lot of the wealth inequality is. And I want to dig into that. I do want to finish my thought though, just a minute ago, and we can come back and talk more about flaws or whatever. But I was kind of, let's just come back to the airline for just a minute, and then I want to come back to you. So the idea that one of the flaws that I was beginning to talk about is just that when money becomes the goal, then in a lot of cases, you do things that are detrimental to your customers or to your product because you can make more money. And in the cases of airlines, safety might be one of those things.
Sure.
So that's where, a lot of times, and this is where I wanted to kind of tie it back to, is that we have, rules that'll be put in place by the government. And this is how your government gets tied into your economy in many ways in order to regulate how those companies are doing business. So you hear regulation a lot when it comes into these businesses, particularly in capitalistic societies, because you can't have just the market decides. Because in many cases, if the market is deciding all by itself, it's not always going to be deciding in the case of safety or if you think of cases like banks where you have FDIC that has to cover, if the bank fails, what happens to your money, those types of things. That's all I want to do is say you can't always completely separate them one from the other.
Yeah, you're kind of pushing back against the typical right-wing talking point, which is that the market should decide because the market is basically like they look at the market kind of like it's this perfect sacred thing, like
right,
like an Ayn Rand kind of view of reality,
right, and that's all I wanted to say a minute ago. I just wanted to get to that. So back to your example with Walmart, and I pulled some stats because when you were starting to describe about how much more the CEO makes over your minimum wage worker at Walmart. So there are a lot of ways that you can compare where we are to where we were, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people will point to minimum wage, right? So I don't know how many people actually make minimum wage now. I don't know if it's more or less than it was in 1980, but I pulled stats of 1980 versus today. So in 1980, minimum wage was $3.10. So that's actually, if you account for inflation, that's over $12 an hour today. Our minimum wage today is $7.25 in the U.S. Now, many states have a higher minimum wage, but I'm just talking about federally, right? So it's actually, if you look at it adjusted for inflation, our minimum wage has dropped 40% since then. But again, I don't know how many people actually make minimum wage. So I wanted to look up like the average household income. Okay. So in 1980, your average household income was around $20,000. In today's money, that's about $78,000. That's actually about flat because today the average household income is about $80,000. So it's like up 2% or something like that. It's pretty flat from then. So in general, people are making about the same thing now that they were 45 years ago. All right. But then when you have to compare that to the cost of living for many of these things, and some of this does get factored into the inflation costs, but there's certain things that are crucial to
housing.
Right. So yeah, exactly. I was looking up average 2-bedroom apartment, how much rent costs for that. In 1980, and I'm just going to use today's dollars, okay, rather than keep going back and forth. In 1980, it would have been about $955 in today's dollars for a 2-bedroom apartment per month. Today, that's $1,920. So it's more than double what it was. So your average household income hasn't really changed. It's about the same, but now your average rent has doubled.
Yeah, this drives me crazy because I remember I moved out of my grandmother's house at 17. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I had a roommate, and it wasn't you, but it was a guy named Mike. And we lived in a trailer on my grandmother's trailer park. And we did not get a sweetheart deal for this. We paid the normal rent, and it was $220 a month, $220 a month.
Yeah.
Like that was only 30 years ago. It wasn't that long ago, and it's 10 times that now.
Yes.
Like it's you can't like I was talking to somebody and I was like, well, surely you can just rent a trailer for $600 or $800. Like my wife's a real estate agent. She's like, no, you cannot. Like, you know, it's crazy how expensive the shit. And this is the worst part. I saw this statistic. I haven't looked it up recently, so it may not still be true. But back when I saw this statistic several years ago, there were more vacant beds in houses in the United States than there were homeless people in the United States at any given time.
Yes.
And I'm like, that right there should make you feel like a complete fucking piece of shit as an American. When you can look at that and say, there are more beds not being slept in every single night than there are people without beds to sleep in every single night. Yeah. How the fuck can you look at yourself in the mirror and not feel ashamed of that, you know?
You should.
Yeah.
You should.
But we don't. We just ignore them, you know?
And so just a couple other things I wanted to touch on quick, just looking at how these things have changed. Groceries are about the same. I was surprised to find that. I would have expected that grocery bills would have been a lot more expensive now. I know, I mean, and of course.
Well, I mean, how recent is your data too? So
2025.
Which part of 2025? Because I mean, there hasn't been data released since.
No, I know this was
early.
it was like April. I think that I was looking at, but to that point, this is adjusting for inflation, right? In 1980, inflation was 13%.
Yeah, I understand.
So we've went through some really high inflation,
but it's not adjusting for
well.
It's not adjusting for tariffs, and it's not adjusting for the stuff going on with food now.
You're absolutely right. And these things are fluid, right? So
just for reference, we're like a week before Thanksgiving,
right?
When we're recording this.
So the one that kind of blew me away though was college education. Okay. Not everybody goes to college. I get that. There are a lot of trades that are out there that don't require college education that are extremely valuable. And, you know, I've never been somebody to look down on somebody if they don't have a college degree. I don't have a college degree, although I work in a field where most people that I work with do.
Yeah, same here.
And that's okay. You know, it's like everybody has their own path, but there are a lot of companies that if you want to get your foot in the door, you got to have a bachelor's degree. Like it's just impossible to get a job at a lot of places without your bachelor's degree. Yep. So it has become, depending on, you know, what job you want, many white collar jobs. You know, you and I are in technology and that's one of those places. But, you know, if you look at, you know, insurance companies and banking and lots of other places, it's a requirement for you to get your foot in the door is to have your bachelor's degree. So in 1980, the average tuition for a semester was $804, which is about $3,100 now. Okay. Today it's over $10,000. So it has over tripled in price during that time while we're still making the same amount of money.
Right.
So our housing costs twice as much and college education costs 3 times as much.
Cars cost more too. I mean, you know, it's like transportation costs more. So gas costs more. Like I don't, the thing that I have seen through my life, which is, and you know, it is kind of a even though this is a myth and this doesn't actually happen, but it is kind of a frog in the pot kind of scenario where the water just keeps getting hotter and you don't notice it until it's so hot it's boiling you, you know? But I have noticed throughout my life that it's like companies just take a little bit more. And what you find is it really gets egregious when there's no options. Like the purists, the capitalist purists, you know, the market forces purists would tell you, oh, well, if companies get so abusive to their customers, the customers will just go to another company. But we are in situations now across multiple industries where that's not possible. Like, where are you going to go if you don't like Google? Right? You're going to go to DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is not that good. Like, that's the problem. It just isn't good. Right? It's the same with Bing. Right? Like, I mean, you don't like Bing. Oh, okay, great. I don't like Google, so I'll go to Bing. Well, Bing's just as bad as fucking Google is. Right? Right. So you're going from bad to worse. Like just now. Right? I'm recording this on a Macintosh, right? I fucking hate Apple. Like, not, I don't hate many things in life. I hate Apple. Okay. I have an iPhone now though, and now I have a Macintosh. Why? Because Microsoft
Because you've joined the cult.
Kind of, because Microsoft has gotten so shitty, they're starting to like Facebook and a lot of the other places. They're starting to just take everything you put in there and send it to AI to train their fucking AI. Well, I'm not doing that, buddy. So I'm going with something else. Apple does not do that yet, so I'm gone to a Mac. But when Apple starts doing it, guess what? There's a great Linux distribution that doesn't do it, that only runs on Mac. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, and just to that point, there's a lot of that. Either it's AI or selling your data for whatever they can make off of that, or it's subscription models.
Yep.
So, and that's something I was reading about the other day that I just thought was crazy. And there's several like automakers, for example.
Oh, my truck is a great example.
Oh, does it have that? Because at first it was like the OnStar kind of stuff, which is fine. That's a good service, but I understand it's got to be staffed. Those people have to be paid. Maybe it should cost a little extra because it's an ongoing thing, but it's optional, right?
Right.
But it wasn't that long ago. So BMW came out with a car. I think this was just in Germany, but basically it was throttled, and you had to pay a monthly subscription fee if you wanted to actually be able to drive the car
at full capacity.
At full power, right? Yeah, it was throttled. I don't remember, but kind of like putting a governor on it. It was like an electronic governor on it that you had to pay to have that unlocked. Or there was a lawsuit not that long ago against Nintendo for the Switch, because Nintendo was trying to argue that even though you had bought a game, meaning even a physical game that you have in a container that you went into GameStop and bought, that you don't actually own the game, you just own the rights to play the game.
Right.
It's like it's turning into everybody wants to sell you a service.
Or a license.
Or a license, and you don't own anything anymore.
And they just push it. Like, this is, the problem is, it's a power imbalance when you get right down to it, right? The corporation has more money, more lawyers, more capability to inflict what they want on you than you have of inflicting what you want on them. If you go to, if you're one customer and you move, the company does not fucking care. Right? Yeah. It takes thousands of customers, sometimes millions of customers to move that needle for the company. So you just don't have that much power. And so, like, kind of what you're talking, this kind of grasping that companies keep doing, it's a ratcheting effect. It doesn't go backwards, and it's insidious. And I'll give you an example of this from my own life that it's pushed me almost to the point of I just want to opt out of the system, almost opt out of the economic system entirely, almost like go live in a cabin in the woods. Like it's getting so bad. I'm just like, I just won't watch anything anymore. How about that? Yeah. But back in the day when I first moved to California, we got cable, and we had cable for a while, and then they kept basically splitting off the packages. Like, to get all the stuff you really wanted, you had to get this big fucking super expensive package, right? And I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I got a high-speed internet link. At the time, Popcorn Time was out, and I don't know if anybody remembers Popcorn Time, but it was the best thing in the world, because it was an app that basically looked for torrents. Like, it was just like Netflix. You just found the thing you wanted to watch, you hit it, it would look for torrents and stream in real time from torrents. Right, to bring this movie to life on your device. It was wonderful. So I just pirated everything, right? And I was like, I feel bad that the creators are not getting a cut of this, but it's predatory. What they're doing is predatory. Here's what you can do: charge me a flat fee every month. I'm one human being. I can only watch so much material, right? Charge me a flat fee every month and give me access to everything, the entirety of human existence. I would pay $200 a month for that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and something like Spotify, for example, kind of does that, right?
But it's only music.
Well, no, it is. But to your point, we were at a point in the past where you had to buy physical media for music, right? You'd buy your tape, your CD, whatever. And then when it became digital, then and MP3s became popular. Well, then suddenly piracy became a lot more popular, and you had the Napsters of the world and LimeWire and all that kind of stuff out there, and it became rampant. And I know me and you and millions of other people, you wanted to listen to new music, and you went and downloaded it off of Napster and you listened to it, instead of going and buying it, because it was getting increasingly expensive, and you didn't really have an easy way, other than if something was played on the radio, to really know what you're getting before you actually go out and get it. So there were even times where you might go try it, and I did this a couple of times, although I'll admit most of it I stole. But there were a couple of times that I would go and download something and like it enough that I actually wanted to go buy the physical media, the CD or whatever, because I did feel a little bad that the artist wasn't getting anything out of my particular purchase. We did the same thing for video games. Sure. Now, the nice thing about the streaming services for music now is that largely made all that MP3 piracy stuff go away.
So the music industry did it it was done in the music industry in a pretty equitable, well, I want to say equitable for the listener way, not equitable for the artist.
Not for the artist, no.
But it's equitable for the listener, because artists correctly recognize, most artists don't have a lot of listeners, right? So they correctly recognize that to get maximum results, they had to put their product on every platform, right? Mm-hmm. So, and you already had, with ASCAP and BMG and all, you already had a licensing system anyway. Yeah. So there was already a distribution system for this shit. So it was pretty easy to make that happen, okay? On the visual art side, movies and television, you have the worst of all possibilities, because it's controlled by a smallish number of production houses, right? And they can pick and choose which properties get to use which licenses. Yes. So what you had initially, Netflix was fucking great, because you just had your one fucking subscription, and if you couldn't get it online, they would ship you a fucking DVD, right? So you literally paid $20 a month and got everything you ever wanted to see. I would do that forever. Okay, I would do that model forever. The problem is everybody saw, Netflix can't be getting all the pie. We're not going to license them this shit. We're going to build our own shitty platform that doesn't work for shit and charge fucking $20 a month to have it. So now I've got 500 fucking platforms on my thing. I don't want any of these fucking platforms, to be honest with you. I'm back to the point of pirating shit. I am literally back to the point that I'm pirating shit again.
Well, and here's the thing. So you're talking about movies, TV shows. I'm going to talk about live sports for a minute, because there's kind of the same problem there with some, but not all. So like if you look at the NFL, DirecTV has had this thing for a long time. It's called Sunday Ticket, that you can literally watch every NFL game. Every NFL game's out there. You pay one price, you can watch every NFL game all season, period. That's kind of the right way to do it, right? You like it. You like football. It's
probably a gazillion fucking dollars.
Yeah, I've never bought it, just because
that tells me something.
Well, I'm more of a baseball fan, and that's where the story gets much worse. because
each team licenses it differently, doesn't it?
Well, right. So every team has their own media rights. So typically, and I'm a huge Atlanta Braves fan, and I know you pick on me about that, and they sucked this year, but they will be better next year.
I mean, it is relative.
But they have the local station, like if you're in Atlanta, then there are games that are broadcast locally. And then they have this right now it's changed names 3 times in the last 4 years, but it used to be Fox Sports South, and then it became Bally's Sports Network, and now it's FanDuel Sports Network. I guess you can tell who.
Yeah, so you can see the influence of gambling in the situation.
Absolutely. And when I said that about the local rights, I'm not even sure there is local stations that carry anymore. Obviously, I'm not in Atlanta. I can't say that for sure. But I remember trying to look up that, because I had considered, when I get into this, you'll understand, but I had considered trying to get like a long distance HD antenna, because supposedly you can pick up stations for as far as like 200 miles away, and we're less than 200 miles to Atlanta. So I thought,
with the digital stations, you wouldn't even really have fuzz or anything. It could either be clear or not, you wouldn't be able to see it at all.
Right. But unfortunately, there is, as far as I can tell, there is no over-the-air broadcast of these games. It's only through cable. So So anyway, so that's fine. So, like you were talking about with your cable package, then yes, you can go and get FanDuel Sports Network, as get the sports extra package, blah blah blah, that has that. And Major League Baseball does this weird stuff with where what is considered local teams for where you are. We're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And when we're in Charlotte, there are 4 different baseball teams that are considered local teams. It's the Atlanta Braves, the Washington Nationals, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Cincinnati Reds.
What the fuck? Oh, have we got farm teams for all those around here or something?
No, we have farm teams for the White Sox, so that makes no sense whatsoever. But Cincinnati is literally like a 7.5 hour drive away from here, but it's considered a local team to the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Okay. So that matters because the other way in which you can watch games, if you don't watch those games on the local team's affiliate. So, in this case, the FanDuel Sports Network,
right,
is that there is MLB.TV, kind of like the whole,
Sunday ticket
NFL Sunday Ticket.
Yeah.
But the problem is they only show out of network games, because they don't want to infringe on the rights that.
So you've actually got a situation where you're local to the team, but cannot watch the team's games basically at all.
Well, I can, because I do get FanDuel.
Oh, okay.
But like
you have to buy it.
But yeah, absolutely, I have to buy it, or I'd have to buy.
That's crazy.
But like I can't.
That's exactly the opposite of what's supposed to happen. Like
exactly. So now it's like, okay, so now I can't watch those games. So that's the way it's been for a while. But now it's gotten worse, because now you've got, okay, we're gonna sell rights to Friday night games to Apple. And now Apple's going to broadcast a game every Friday night, or maybe 2 games, because I think they do 2 games every Friday night now.
So now you have to have FanDuel and Apple?
Well, right. So now if I've got a Braves game that's on awful. A Friday night that's on Apple, now I've got to have the Apple subscription as well.
That is totally just a fucking, just a cash.
Well, it is. And then they've got MLB Network, and MLB Network shows some games, but you have to get a different tier of cable to have MLB Network. And then you've got, okay, even if you had those other things, sometimes like they did this thing where they're showing like an early baseball game, like on Sundays early, that's on like the Roku network or something like that. That if you want to watch that game, you got to have a Roku. And anyway, it adds and adds and adds. And then suddenly you're looking, it's like, I got to have like 6 different apps or cable or whatever if I want to watch every game.
Yeah. Why would you even want to watch the game at that point? Fuck it. It's too much trouble.
Right. And that they're doing that to every single team. And it just adds on and adds on.
I got a solution for you, Michael.
Quit liking baseball?
No. If you choose the Los Angeles Dodgers, then you won't be local anymore and you can watch it.
Yeah, I hate the Dodgers. Sorry.
Oh, that's the team you should choose. Either them or the Yankees.
Oh, God, you just picked the 2 worst. So anyway, back to your point, though, is that you've got all these things where, the word that you used the other day with me that I told you I really like, cruft. Right? They're purposely putting things in place to make it harder.
Yep.
It is not with the
They're just trying to make your life shittier, so you have to do this thing,
Well, they want to get meaning all of these companies, they want to get as much of your money as possible. Yep. And that is the capitalistic way, is to
you can't that's part of the problem, is you can't even be angry about it, because that's
right.
Like if you're a CEO of a company, that's what that's your mandate, man. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You have a duty. Like you can go to jail for not doing that. Like if you see a way to exploit the system that is completely legal and you don't take that, right? Your shareholders can sue the shit out of you for not taking that. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Standing on morality is not even allowed, and that to me, right there shows a problem with the fucking system. Like, shouldn't like, I saw this meme the other day, which really cracked me up, but is also kind of chilling. The meme was about the AI bubble right now, right? But it was saying how, the Matrix kind of had it right, but completely wrong. Like, the Matrix had people, working in this imaginary environment for this imaginary stuff to actually power all the robots. Whereas right now, we are working in a real environment for imaginary stuff to power the fucking robots. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of silly when you think about it from that perspective, but it's true. Like we are actually. I'm not saying capitalism's all wrong. I'm not saying that materialism is all wrong. We have gotten most of the improvements of modern society, I would think, are because of those engines, right? Yeah. They're very good engines for doing things. But I think we have a tendency to place too much emphasis on capitalism in particular kind of funnels you down this road that says the most important thing is whatever wealth you can hoard. Like that is the whole goal of capitalism is to get the biggest money pile, right? It's monopoly basically. Whoever has the biggest wad of cash at the end wins. Yeah. But that is not something to actually achieve in reality. Like in reality, achieving that is a highly dysfunctional state.
Well, it is, and there's diminishing returns of what you can actually use that money for as it gets bigger and bigger. And I think we probably want to talk about that in a little bit too. But I want to go back to, you said monopoly, and it was something I already wanted to say anyway. But, back in the, I can't remember when it was, but you had Standard Oil that got broken up into all these different oil companies. You had the original Baby Bells that all came from or I guess it was from AT&T or whatever it was.
No, I think you had the original Bell got broke up into Baby Bells, right, which then eventually became AT&T. Yeah.
Well, one of them did, or a couple of it, because it was anyway.
They basically all reformed the original structure. Again,
well, and the point is that, again, there's always going to be this link between what the government and the economy of the country, how they're intertwined, regardless of whether you want to pull them apart or not. Because we do have these laws in the U.S. that is supposed to prevent monopolies. And we used to have more teeth to that. We used to actually go break up companies. I mean, even Microsoft had to start offering their Internet Explorer as a separate product at one point because, our government basically said you can't take a monopoly on, accessing the internet, make people only be able to use this browser because they already had a monopoly on the operating system, right? Everybody used Windows. Some people didn't, but like 90% of people that had a PC used Windows. So they couldn't use their monopoly over that to gain a monopoly on something else. But now you look at a lot of these big companies. Amazon is a great example of that. There are certainly other places that you can go online and purchase something, and people do. But if I am a person that wants to sell my product, if I have a good idea, a product, and I want to get it out to as many people as possible, where else am I going to put that product? Yep. There is only one place that I can realistically do that.
It's the reason all my books are on Amazon. Like you couldn't make it happen any other way. Like it's.
You're absolutely right. And same thing with like video games, Steam. Mm-hmm. Like yes, there is God.
I would say Steam is much more morally defensible than Amazon, but yes, they do have a monopoly. Yeah.
Right, but
kind of like Epic has the same thing. GOG,
they do, but. That as a creator, if you want to reach the most number of people, there is one obvious answer in both of those cases, right? And because those companies are in that position, they can charge you a
premium,
a crazy premium. So like Amazon,
I don't think Amazon charges a crazy. I don't think they can actually. If I can go buy it at Walmart, I'm going to buy it at Walmart.
No. I'm talking. It's a premium. Okay, let me say it this way. It's not they're charging it to the end buyer.
They're charging it to the creator. Okay, yeah.
So
Walmart does the same thing too. They'll strong arm to get the margin as their own margin as high as they possibly can and reduce the margin on the manufacturer.
So we had this idea in this capitalism that the best ideas went out because the market says that. But the problem is you have some of these companies that are so big that, one, if I have an idea, I have to go through those companies to do it, and they're going to take a piece of it, is what it comes down to. So it limits what you're able to do. And two, let's just say that I want to compete with those big companies. I want to go out and create my own marketplace to compete with Amazon. Well, one of two things is going to happen, and this happens all the time. Either one, I'm just not going to be able to compete. Like there's no way without me spending $1 gazillion to get people to start coming to my application versus Amazon. And it's just not going to happen. Most people don't have we're talking about Jeff Bezos, right? Nobody's going to outspend Jeff Bezos. So,
it's kind of even worse than that. Like, since we're kind of into this, might as well go all the way into it. Like, the idea that there's equal access is very wrong. I'll just use my own industry as an example. Most people don't know this. Most New York Times bestsellers are not bestsellers. Like, almost all of them aren't. Like, what happens is you get a publisher and you tell that publisher, look, most important thing for me is to be a New York Times bestseller. And they say, great, you'll be a New York Times bestseller. Okay. And what they do is in that first run of publishing, they buy it. They buy the 5,000 books. Yeah. Because that's all you had to do. You had to buy 5,000 copies. 5,000 copies had to be bought by someone the first week. So they buy the 5,000 copies, or they have a company buy the 5,000 copies, or what. This is why fucking Melania Trump can release a book and it's fucking bestseller. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants to read that fucking drivel, but she'll be a bestseller the week it's released. Yeah. Okay. That is the type of corruption we're talking about. Once you become a New York Times bestseller, like, your book's going to fucking sell. It just is. Yeah. Okay. It's going to automatically be high up on the Amazon ranks. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have enough money, you can make yourself successful no matter how shitty your idea is. And the environment right now is, if you don't have enough money, it kind of doesn't matter how good your fucking idea is. You're going to get taken advantage of.
So the other way that this can go, though, is that, let's say you have a fantastic idea, so much better than anything else that's out there, and you have some money, enough to get it known. Maybe you can't compete with Amazon, but your idea is so great that people go, oh, wow, well, that's new, that's inventive, that's whatever. I want to do that.
Right.
Well, then one of two things is going to happen. Most likely, whoever the bigger person is going to make you an offer you can't refuse. They're going to buy it out from you.
And then it never sees the light of day because they don't want to destroy their value.
It depends. If it's such a great idea, they're worried that somebody else may, if they don't do it, somebody else might, they may buy it and incorporate that in whatever they do. Or if it's the case of, and I know you've heard urban legends about this before, but some of it is actually true. I did a lot of research on this not that long ago just because I was interested in it, is that companies will purposely bury it because it would hurt their industry. Yep. So, for example, and this is fascinating to me, but back when electricity was first becoming popular across, houses, right?
Oh, is this the AC/DC story with Tesla?
No. This is people were starting to get electricity in their homes, and with electricity, of course, you had light bulbs, right? And,
I know the story. Go ahead.
And the idea is that everybody was trying to create light bulbs that would last longer and longer because you wanted to be able to advertise and sell your light bulbs for more. Yep. So what they realized, though, was that the longer they made the light bulbs last, the less money they were actually making. They couldn't charge enough because they were the quality of the light bulb was outstripping what they could realistically charge for them. Yep. So companies were losing money. So there's these 5 companies that came together, and it was GE, and I don't remember all of them, but GE was one of them, that came together in this consortium. They were all competitors, but they colluded to say, we are going to standardize on building light bulbs that only last X number of hours. And that we're going to hold each other accountable through a series of fines that says, we're going to do testing. And if your light bulbs last more than 1,000 hours, on average, then for every, 100 hours more than that on average, when we do these tests, you get fined a certain amount of money that gets split across the other companies in the consortium. So they literally colluded to make sure that they were not building better products. There's another situation where supposedly there was a company that made made this fantastic bug spray that literally you sprayed it in your house, you got rid of roaches, they never came back. Raid apparently bought, or the company that owns Raid bought them out, and it disappeared. It was never seen again.
I don't know about the Raid thing, but I do know the lightning, the light story is true. And in fact, I haven't checked it recently, but there was a light bulb that was still burning in a firehouse in New York from like 19 something. Like it's like over 100 years. It's been burning constantly. And if you think about it, like, this makes sense because what burns out in the light is the filament.
Yeah.
And so all you have to do is change the material the filament's made out of, and you can change how long it lasts, make it thicker. You could, you're fighting a battle between heat dissipation on the filament and, the thickness of it to make the brightness that you're looking for. But I don't, this is interesting because I haven't looked into this, but I wonder if the whole push towards fluorescent bulbs is just a hoax. It's just bullshit because like
or
fluorescent
LEDs.
Yeah. Because it was fluorescent first and then LEDs
right.
because it was all about energy efficiency and making it last longer. The energy efficiency for LEDs anyway is probably true. That probably does. But I don't think they're going to last longer than those original light bulbs. I think if they just made fucking light bulbs the way they made them originally, they last 100 fucking years,
Well, they would, but there is an energy efficiency piece because so much of incandescent bulbs, so much of the energy is lost as heat rather than light, whereas LEDs don't do that. So but you can produce the same amount of...
Interesting. Like, LEDs have a big problem with heat, though. Like, they really do. Like, if you look at... the construction of LEDs, most of them have like this foil piece on the bottom, and that's how they die, is that they burn out of heat. I don't know what, maybe that's the circuitry or something that generates the heat, because I know the LEDs themselves don't.
I mean, that might be true, but I just mean in general, like, if you have an incandescent bulb and an LED bulb, you can't even touch the incandescent bulb while it's on because it'll burn you, and an LED bulb, it won't. It's losing so much more heat.
I assume that's, causing your AC bill to go up too and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it is, but it's also just requiring you to pull more power because it requires more power to produce the same amount of light because you're losing so much in heat instead. So, yeah. Okay, so we're in this situation where people are not making as much money, or I'm sorry, making the same wages, but expenses keep going up. And we were talking about some of those numbers before. So I feel like... typically the way that gets handled when it gets out of line, at least in our country, is that the government steps in. It's everything from welfare programs to, subsidies to, this is where, you were starting to talk about the different types of economic, processes or ideologies earlier. And this is where a lot of people will start saying socialism, right? So there are a lot of things that can be done in that realm. But a lot of people disagree about whether they should be done or not. Some of those things that we've heard in recent time have been things like free college tuition, which obviously would remove the huge increase in cost to go to college. You've heard about universal basic income. You've heard about, the things that we do to control costs. And I didn't even have this, I didn't do this research, but the amount of money that it costs in the US to have any kind of healthcare is so much more expensive than almost any other nation in the world. But there are ways in which the government can help manage costs of prescription drugs or certain types of procedures or things like that. But again, there's a lot of people that'll scream, socialism, that's bad when those things happen. Although there's a lot of other countries that do this. In some cases, they are considered, democratic socialist countries. A lot of the Scandinavian countries, for example, or Switzerland, I think. France. I mean, there's a lot of places that do some of this. Not all of it's perfect. Some countries do better than others. Sweden tends to be one of those places that gets used as a hallmark of this is the right way to do it. But I don't have tons of data on that. But looking at that, it feels like, as you said, it prevents people from becoming poor, right? It's the idea is that the fact that you don't have a good idea, or that the corruption that exists in capitalism, you can't be affected catastrophically by those things. It gives you a safety net.
Yep.
And a lot of people will talk about that, an economic safety net. Or maybe it's just trying to even the playing field depending on your socioeconomic status. Obviously, if you've got somebody that grows up in a family with one parent who works a minimum wage job, the chances of them going to college is next to nothing, particularly if there's no history, of that being something that's important in their family prior. Whereas somebody who grows up in a suburban neighborhood with two parents that work and, they both are college educated, it's both prioritized and funded essentially by those families. So you remove some of that inequality and just, your circumstantial inequality and give access to that to other people. But a lot of people will look at that and say, well, and I hate this, but I'll just say it. People will say, well, I had to pay for college, so I don't see why, other people shouldn't have to as well, or, I worked my ass off while I was in college, so why should you go to college and not have a job as well? Or, other things like that. And I can kind of understand that, but it also feels like a lot of these people are the same people that they would freely admit that they want their kids to have it better than they did when they were their age. And yet they get sour grapes when certain things might feel like they're given to them without them, quote unquote, earning it.
Yeah. So I got a couple of thoughts on this. So one is I used to be that way. In fact, I was that way when my kids were growing up, to my shame. And in fact, the words I told them I was very straightforward. I said, when you turn 18, you have three choices. You can stay in my house and I will charge you rent. You can leave my house and go get you a job and be on your own. Or you can go to college and I will still, pay for your room and board and everything. But you're on your own about how to pay college. You're going to have to get loans because I don't have shit for you. And all three of my children chose to move out. And this is part of the thing that changed me is for a while, all three of them were living in a house on the property we live on now that was built in the 1800s. And you can literally see through the walls. Like at the corners, you can see the outside. They had, power was on and off, all that kind of stuff. They were working whatever jobs they could work. Jesse was actually trying to go to school. I mean, they were trying, man. They were trying hard and getting nowhere. And it took much longer than it needed to. It took me probably better part of a decade to see this before I reversed course. And I was like, this is the stupidest fucking thing I could have ever said to these kids. Like, so I understand, I guess that's a long way of saying I understand probably better than most that philosophy because I espoused it. Right. But the thing that I realized at the time was that, and this was kind of the first level of moral clarity that I got to, was that I had different circumstances than they had. Like I was looking at it as I quote unquote made it. I was reasonably successful. I certainly did better than my parents. And nobody helped me. Like my grandmother didn't help me. Like I moved out at 17 with no fucking safety net. Like no, I've lived in my car. I know what that feels like. Okay, so I've been there and I succeeded. I made it somewhere better.
Right.
So my thought was, if I did it, you can do it. I believe you're capable of doing what I did. You know what I'm saying?
And to be clear, because I do want to make sure that people who are listening to this understand, what you just said. You've lived in your car. You talked about earlier. You lived in a trailer park, and I have too. I won't ever say that I literally lived out of my car, but I did live on somebody else's couch for a few months, a couple of different times.
Right.
And, I've lived in multiple trailers, and, like, we're not coming at this from some perspective of
some ivory tower somewhere, right?
Exactly. And yes, a lot of people that you see, like, we're in IT, you're a writer as well. There are a lot of things that are going on that, typically I would think of us as being fairly well paid in our positions today.
Yeah.
And you're right. We have been able to make things happen in our lives in order to get to that point. But there's a bit of survivorship bias to that, right? There are so many more people who have been in the same types of situations that we've been in that didn't get to that point and wasn't on a podcast to talk about it, right?
Yep.
And I don't say that in order to pat ourselves on the back and say, look how great we did, but more just to take stock of the fact that, we can't use our examples as saying this is the typical way that that's going to work out.
Well, this is what I was saying, like the kind of first level of moral clarity was that I understood their circumstances weren't the same as mine. So my circumstances were that I'm a pretty bright guy and I'm very stubborn and I don't really take no for an answer and I'm not easily discouraged. Mm-hmm. So, I was going to soldier on and power through things that maybe other people wouldn't have.
Right.
And I had the intellectual capability to do that in an industry that normally requires that you go get some kind of specialized training. I did my own specialized training and I understood, for whatever reason, I know how to learn things from books very well. And not everybody can do that either, but most of what I know from reading a book somewhere. So I do know how to gather information out of books very well and then apply it in real life. And I've taught enough people to know not everybody can do that.
Right.
And I didn't take any of that shit into account. Like, I didn't take my children's own proclivities into account. And they're all smart kids in their own way, but they're in very different ways than my smart is, right? Yeah. And so they were never going to take my path to start with. They were always going to have to find their own path. And the world is very different than it was when I grew up.
Right. Well, it is. And I mean, we talked about some of that just in that so many of the things that, we had to figure out how to pay for is just a lot more expensive now relative to the income that people have. So, the idea, like you said, of going and paying, you were talking about rent. I remember being in a single wide mobile home in like the late 90s, well, mid to late 90s, that I think I paid $400 a month in rent, right? And it was a 2-bedroom mobile home. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't fancy by any means, but it was safe and it was comfortable and it was out in the country somewhere. It wasn't like I was in the middle of a really bad neighborhood or anything like that. But, again, you can't find something like that
for
today, for even that adjusted price. So it's like, okay, that was something that I was working for a while, not minimum wage, but less than what today's minimum wage is. And was able to afford.
Right.
And you can't do that now. I saw something recently where it was talking about, housing and just normal expenses that went along with that. So your groceries and your electric bill and, things like that. But they were also talking about how today we have a lot more expenses that we take on that are somewhat necessary that we didn't have then.
Like internet,
cell phone bill, even like when I've pretty much had cable my whole life, but we're talking about cable and streaming service. It's not necessary, right? But when I was a kid, for the most part, you watched what was over broadcast air, right? You can still do that, but and you probably even get better quality stuff now than you did then because you've got the HD receivers that you have to pay for. But I would say, but it's just this small, tiny little sliver of everything that's out there now.
And the number of commercials you have to watch is just fucking, like even now, like they're starting to put commercials in paid services.
Yeah.
Paramount has commercials. I'm like, I don't even want to watch Paramount anymore. I'll just fucking pirate it. Yeah. Fuck you guys. I'm not paying you and fucking watching commercials. You're out of my mind. Like I'm not doing that.
Right.
But let me get back to because I wasn't done with the thing.
Yeah.
So like I said, the first level of moral clarity was kind of realizing that their situation is not my situation, right? But the second level of moral clarity is something you were alluding to, right? That the idea that you want your children to have a better, easier life than you had. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't have that opinion, okay? And part of the reason I didn't have that opinion is because I had kind of looked at, and I think this is true of almost everybody who has encountered a lot of trauma. I kind of looked at my trauma as a positive thing. It made me tougher. It made me who I am. This built me, right? I didn't realize it had kind of destroyed me in its own little way. There's challenge is important, okay? But there's a happy medium somewhere, right? You're empowered by challenge when you feel like you are equal to the challenge, or it's maybe just slightly out of your grasp, but if you push super hard, you can get it. When you face a challenge that is insurmountable and it keeps smacking you down every single time you go for it and you never have any success, you're never going to reach the end of that road. And everybody's proclivity for that level of challenge is different.
It is. And it's kind of like, people like to use the phrase, that doesn't kill me makes me stronger, right?
Not always.
But I was going to say that they're leaving out all the things that might maim you for life, right? Yeah. Because there is that, it's, you were talking about your kids, but I know me and you and I were roommates, for a couple of different times where in that mobile home I was talking about before at one point, where there were times that the power got cut off. There were times that, in one other place we had a kerosene heater. Oh, God. And there were times that we ran out of kerosene.
In the middle of winter.
Yeah. I mean, there are things that were bad that happened that we overcame. And sure, you get better at dealing with those types of things. But that doesn't mean that you want your kids to go through those things.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It's like that whole thing. There's a meme that kind of really solidified this next level of moral clarity to me, which was, so you went through some trauma when you were growing up. I feel sorry for you for that. Why the fuck would you want your kids to have to do that?
Right.
Like, just look at it from that perspective. Isn't it better if they don't have to do that? Like, isn't that just better?
Absolutely. And, I do get that you can grow from circumstances. But to your point, not everybody is going to grow. And it's really risky. It's like, you wouldn't do that on purpose. Now,
it's like, we were talking about this the other morning, actually. There's a very good analogy to this. It's like, when I was younger, like I love Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
Right. And when I was younger, I would watch the movie Conan the Barbarian, and that whole initial, montage where he's pushing the fucking wheel and he gets bigger and stronger and tougher and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's how you do it. Like Rocky drinking the fucking raw eggs, yeah, man, that's how you do it. When you really want it, that's how, you know what I'm saying? And it made him into this really strong, tough guy. No, it turned him into a fucking psychopath is what it did. Like Conan the Barbarian's a goddamn psychopath. Like he just fucking kills people. That's what he does. Like, it didn't make him a better person. It made him a demonstrably worse person. Right. Yes, he's a tough, worse person. That isn't better.
And a lot of people will, and this is typically, blue collar workers, for example, and again, very needed. I don't want to sound like I'm minimizing, what people who have to work with their hands for a living. Absolutely.
Some of them
needed.
Enjoy it. I mean, there's a pleasure to working with your hands too.
Absolutely. And they provide a real value to our environment, to our economy, to people. Like I don't want anything that I say to make it sound as if I'm disparaging of anybody that does those things. I'm absolutely not. In fact, I'm kind of jealous at times of some of the skills that I've seen people demonstrate that I don't have. Right. But that being said, a lot of times there are people that when they work hard, they've worked in construction or they've worked in, I don't know, like even like I use construction and there's a lot of like carrying around heavy materials and just being exhausted at the end of the day. But there's also just, doing work that a lot of people will look down on, like people who
like landscaping or lawn maintenance.
Or a janitor who's like cleaning toilets and all that kind of stuff. They're doing a lot of stuff like that. There are certain certain traits that they build in order to deal with that. You learn to deal with uncomfortable stuff. You get stronger. You learn to handle uncomfortable situations or to just make yourself go through something you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real skill.
Sure.
That is something that people learn. But you don't want to inflict trauma to do that.
Yep.
And a lot of people will look at, well, when I went through these things and I turned out okay. And in fact, maybe I have this now favorable trait from that. But there are other ways to get that.
Yep.
You don't have to have been beaten as a child or had, left without a home or, any of these other trauma ridden kind of things to get there. You can still develop those things by doing a lot of those things I just described. Go and do hard stuff.
Right.
Like that's what a lot of people I feel like really need to strive for is challenge yourself in multiple ways. Try to do things that are hard and maybe it's things that you don't get right away.
Right.
And it takes persistence and effort in order to get there. And I'm straying way off of wealth inequality, but I'm just saying that a lot of people when they look at those things like you're talking about, that's just like, well, a bunch of snowflakes, now you hear that, right? Not necessarily snowflakes. We just don't want to inflict all that awful stuff on them if we don't have to. But pulling that back to the wealth inequality, the gap between the people who are living in poverty and the number of people who continue to slip below that poverty line keeps growing, and the gap between them and the wealthiest keeps growing, and that chasm keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, I want to kind of pull back to when you were talking about, the socialism aspect and how that's supposed to prevent people from being poor, right? So there's obviously a lot of negativity around that word socialism in the United States. So how do you get around the idea of, it seems like it's a really good thing to keep people out of that lowest level of poverty where those types of trauma exist, and to try to make, for all those people that are trying to have their, that they want their kids to have it better than they had it and not have to go through those things. Like, how do you get there? Like,
well, I think I don't have solid answers. I just have ideas. I think the first thing people should realize, and I don't think people get this, is that poor people are not poor generally through any fault of their own. Like, we have this almost moral opinion of wealth, like where we automatically halo effect rich people as, that's something to aspire to be. That there's someone.
Look what they've achieved.
Right. There's something to look up to, and poor people are someone to look down on. And that is a tactic that has been engendered in our society by the rich people. Like, you can go all the way back to actually the founding of this fucking country and see that happening. Like, it was one of the initial things. I think I told this story in a previous podcast too, but like, it's one, or maybe we were just talking about it, but it's one of the initial things. Like when this country was founded and slavery started up, right? What you had before slavery was indentured servitude. Mm-hmm. So white people would, sign up to be a worker in order to pay for their passage to the New World, because the conditions in England were so bad they were starving, right? In fact, I used to know a guy, his grandfather, he told me a story. His grandfather, during the Irish potato famine, was stuck on a ship with a $10 bill. Like, that's all he had to his name, a United States $10 bill. And he was 10 years old and stuck on a ship to America, right, with a $10 bill. And so he had to make his way in New York City by himself as a 10-year-old boy, because he was definitely going to die if he stayed in his homeland. Okay. Right. But so that's the kind of people who came over here. Right. And then we brought slaves. And what happened is you had slaves, you had indentured servants, and you had Indians, the Native Americans. Right. And so all of these were poor and being traumatized. And so they all ate with each other. They all saw similar problems in their households. They all developed a bond, and they started rebelling against the rich landowners. So the rich landowners said, oh, we got to fix this. How do we do that? Well, first we got to get rid of the Indians. So let's start making war against the Indians, and the Indians will fight with us. And then the white people and the slaves will not try to join with the Indians.
Right.
So they did that. And then the second thing they did was, oh, well, how do we get these white people to quit tossing in their lot with the slaves? And what they found out was that, oh, we got to give the white people a way out. We have to give them, say, after you've worked in indentured servitude for 10 years, once you've paid off your service, then we will give you this small plot of land that you can share crop on. So you still give us the majority of the stuff, but you get to keep a little bit for yourself, right? And this is quote unquote your land, right? And that put them on a level above the slaves, and now the white people, the poor white people, could look down on the slaves, and you're back to where you were. You're back to this hierarchy where everybody has someone to look down upon, and so they feel good about themselves again. So it's all this psychological fucking shit, right?
Yeah.
We have to get rid of this idea that you are responsible for literally anything in your fucking life. Like there is no blame, okay? You are who you are. You make the decisions you make, right? You make them because of all of the things that have occurred into your life up to that point. So there was no way you were ever going to make a different decision because you made that decision based on the cumulative knowledge of everything that's occurred up to that point. And even if you, I know this is getting free will, but even if you say that it's random, even if you say that you pick from a random set of possibilities, it still doesn't fucking matter. The possibilities are still out of your choice, right? Yeah. And the randomness is out of your choice. So you're going to do what you're going to do. And there's no reason in blaming a poor person for being poor. There's no reason in blaming the person on the side of the road for begging, saying, well, why don't they get out and work? Motherfucker, whatever they're going through, that's the last thing on their mind right now. Whatever they're going through is so fucking bad, they would rather sit on the side of the road and be spat at, right? Yeah. And beg for money than fucking go out and do that thing. Yeah. So maybe you should shut the fuck up because you're not in their shoes and you don't know what they're going through.
Right. No, you're right. And we just got through this government shutdown thing where it's ending now. So this is, mid-November 2025. But we were coming into November with the SNAP benefits were being cut back or eliminated entirely as part of the shutdown, right? And there was you hear a lot of left versus right talking points about that, and and you hear it all the time. There was one, I don't remember which politician it was. It was a Republican senator or House representative, but I don't remember the name, so I apologize. But had said something along the lines of, instead of figuring out how we're going to give all these people this money when the government shut down, maybe we should be figuring out why there's so many people on SNAP benefits anyway. Making it sound very... Well, the way he was putting it was kind of,
putting the blame on them.
Yeah. Why are all these people out there, receiving all this benefit?
But I immediately thought, well, he's not wrong.
Yes, but in a different way. That's right. But just looking at the stats for that, first of all, 90% of the people who receive and just in case anybody didn't know, we're talking about what a lot of people will call food stamps. There's no stamp. You get a card, but it is the idea that, or it's the mechanism that allows people that don't have money, that are in poverty, to go and get food, right?
Food assistance.
Exactly. So 90% of adults who are eligible or able to work that are on SNAP assistance work. So there's only 10% of them that don't, quote unquote, get a job.
Yep.
So that's number one. Number two is something like 60% of all people who receive SNAP assistance are either children or the elderly. People who typically would not be in the workforce anyway because they're past their retirement age.
Or they're too young.
Right? So we get so quick to try to blame people.
Well, hang on. I want to throw one more statistic in
Yeah,
there.
okay.
I don't know the exact number, but I think it's about 40% of SNAP resistance, or something like 40% of military families are also SNAP resistant.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's like, listen, I think what you want to think, but maybe the guys that you've trained to hold and shoot weapons and kill people with them, maybe those are not the people whom you want their children to be starving. Just maybe.
Yeah.
just maybe that's an idea you want to keep in your head. So yeah, I mean, it's like and this all started. I mean, this shit. I mean, it's been around forever, but it really got supercharged, like most things, with Reagan. You know, because when he made up this whole fucking bullshit story about the fucking welfare queen that did not exist. Look this shit up, people. It did not exist.
Yeah.
But he made the shit up out of whole cloth to feed people's their biases, their inbuilt. Because who was this? It was I think it was Lyndon Johnson who said, give a white man a poor white man someone he can look down on, and you've got him forever. You can do anything you want to him.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong. Like it's just psychology. You just tell someone, hey, you're better than these people, right? And give them someone to kick, and then you can kick them, right? Shit rolls downhill, man. So if there's no bottom. Now that, you know what I'm saying? If there's nobody below you and you realize you're at the bottom, now you feel awful and there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do but fight. Right. But if there's somebody below you that you can hurt, then you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's insidious anyway.
It is. And you have this gap that keeps growing. So, we talked about how the average household income has stayed about the same over the last 45 years. But we're also seeing that there's more people in poverty. So what's the other side of that? The other side of it is that the richest people are getting incredibly more rich. Mm-hmm. So during that time, adjusting for inflation, so we're talking about the same numbers. If you took the 400 richest people, according to Forbes, how much those, and the 400 have changed, obviously, over 45 years. But you take the 400 richest people and you look at their average net worth. It has gone up by 18 times from 1980, or actually 82 in this case, on this stat, but 82 to 2025. So if the average income is staying about the same, but the richest of the rich, who, by the way, this like top 0 or 0.01% of everybody U.S., the top 100th% in the U.S. actually own like 9.5% of all the wealth in the U.S. Right?
Yeah, there's something like the top 100 or something, or top 1% or something like that, maybe 0.1%, but own something like 40% or something of U.S. wealth. Like it's it's like there's some very small fraction of the U.S. population that owns more wealth than the entire rest of the U.S. population.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And that's growing by, like in this case, it's a factor of 18 times.
Yeah, it's growing more and more.
So if that's growing, then where's it coming from? And it's coming from those people that were lower middle class
that are seeing their income dwindle.
Right. Or just not going up with the rate of all the
or they're
expenses.
Paying more to the company. It's the problem here is the system is not just, right? The system, and I've been beating this drum for a while. Everyone knows the system is broken. Right-wing people know the system is broken. Left-wing people know the system is broken. People in the middle who aren't political at all know the system is broken. Yeah. Everyone knows there's a fucking problem, okay? And the biggest problem, everyone knows, is money, right? Yeah. Because yes, we've got a lot of other problems. We've had most of those our entire history, okay? Money problems influence everything else. It makes everything else worse, right? And so you've got this monetary issue, this economic issue, and then on top of that, you've got a media landscape which fosters ignorance, and an educational system which has been failing our children for at least my entire lifetime. And so you have a society that doesn't know how to make itself not ignorant, and is ignorant, and is being basically incited by fear and misinformation, which distills that ignorance down into hatred. And so that's where we're at right now.
You said so much in that sentence or two. Like, I feel like we could make a podcast out of like separate sections of what you just said. Like, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So yes, your point about the media, that it used to be the case that you would watch the nightly news, and God, I'm sounding old when I'm gonna start talking about watching the 6 o'clock news,
Yeah.
but you got facts, or if it was like national level kind of stuff with Walter Cronkite or whatever, way back in the day, that was before my time. You expected to get facts, and maybe every once in a while there would be an opinion piece, but it would be really like obvious. They would come up and like put something on the screen that would say opinion or whatever. And it was very fact-based, and you went there to get information. Right. Like, it was literal information that you could do something with. And almost every media outlet now, whether you're talking about news or you're talking about social media or whatever, everything is so biased and skewed now, and maybe I'm naive, but I don't think it used to be as bad as it didn't used to be that. I mean,
it did, to be fair, it did start with Fox and CNN. Like, that's where it started. They both, I mean, Reagan, it all started with Reagan, of course. Yeah, because Reagan actually, during Reagan's administration, they did actually pass they got rid of the Truth and Fair, or is it Truth and something document. Basically, there was a law that said, there were several laws. There were at least one law, but I think there was 2 laws. One that said you could not advertise to children in children's programming. And the moment that was repealed, you saw the effects of that, right, because you immediately had G.I. Joe and Transformers, and all these cartoons that were made specifically to sell product.
Man, just way off topic, but G.I. Joe was my jam when I was a
Too.
kid. I remember my 10th birthday, every single gift was some sort of G.I. Joe thing, and that was like memorable. Like I still remember my 10th birthday.
But you can understand now why that law existed.
Oh, right, absolutely.
Because like before that, we had educational, I would say high quality children's programs. Like the main children's programs were things like
Sesame Street,
yeah, or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It was good things to teach your children, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's just let's try to sell a product, and if we can throw something with some kind of a moral message in there, maybe we do that.
Oh yeah, and there's been so much. I mean, back, like you said, back in those days, G.I. Joe and Thundercats and He-Man and all those types of things. But even more recent with things like Pokemon or Beyblade or all these, and that Beyblade's kind of old too at this point. But
yep,
it's all that. You're absolutely right.
And so you got that, and then there was a secondary thing where used to be there was a law that, like you said, it had to be very, very in your face if a news organization was going to publish an opinion piece. Mm-hmm. But the law was based on newspapers. So you would see, this was very common in newspapers, you would always see the editorial or the opinion column. Right. You knew it was called the fucking opinion column. Yep. You knew it was an opinion, even though it was in the newspaper, right? What happened is you saw Fox News and CNN is the moment they could, that law was relaxed and they could do shit on TV that you couldn't do in print. You saw them start doing shit like putting right after the news or right before the news an opinion piece, and not claiming in any kind of big way it was an opinion. It was just Fox and Friends or whatever the fuck, Yeah. And so you don't realize what you're watching is not fucking news. What you're watching is some loudmouth assholes fucking biased fucking completely paid for usually take on something, or self-serving, like Tucker Carlson. Everything he does is fucking self-serving. Like you don't realize that. You think it's fucking news if you're a rube. If you're not, and I know people are going to get upset by that word, but that's what you are. Okay, a rube is someone who does not understand that they're being manipulated. Okay, so you're a fucking rube. All right, so if you don't want to be a rube, here's how you not be a rube. Whenever you're watching something, stop. Cut your fucking I'm experiencing shit brain off. Say, wait a minute, what is the angle here?
Right. Yeah. And that's, I feel like I say this to people all the time. I know I've said it to you before. And sometimes I think it's really annoying to some people. But every time that I read a news story, see something on TV, or even in many, many cases, just talking to somebody, particularly if it's something that's politically charged or let's like the three big ones is like politics, religion, and college football. It's like that. People get really excited about those things. I don't really care for college football that much, but sports in general, everybody always has an angle, right? Everybody's got an opinion, and you have to understand that when people feel emotionally charged about a thing, then they're not going to talk to you as a person who is just trying to have a reasonable conversation in order to both communicate and learn. They are trying to talk you into something, right? They're trying to talk you into believing like them, or to believing just that they're right about something or whatever. And, you get onto social media and you get all these people that are just screaming past each other and, I'm right, back and forth, and nobody, you lose everything, right? There is no point to any of that. It just becomes screaming into space, into the void, right? So to your point, and I think going to the next thing that you were talking about was education, is that we should be doing a better job in schools teaching people how to think.
Yep.
Like the actual skills that are involved with critical thinking and analysis and things like that. And I'm not, I know that you are very down on where public education is today. And I know you have a lot of strong opinions about it. That's kind of why I say we could almost do a whole separate podcast.
Oh, we could definitely do a podcast on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that you have a lot of experience and good ideas with, things that work, things that don't, the things that we do or don't do. But like, if you wanted to boil all of that down to me anyway, the one thing that we do a poor job at, it's what I just said, which is teaching critical thinking skills and how to apply them.
Yeah, I agree. I will agree with that. I think one of the biggest failures we have, I think, educationally, is that the whole system's pretty fucked. But if I could give one thing that I think would correct a very large number of them, it would just be teaching as early as you possibly can, probably in kindergarten, because I think this is something you can teach in kindergarten. It's hard, but I think you can do it. Teach a truncated version of the scientific method, right? It's just, you got this problem, right? How do you think you can fix the problem, right? You think you can do this thing and that'll solve the problem?
How do you know?
Right. Try it. Let's see if it works. It doesn't work? Okay. Well, let's formulate something new. Why did that fail? Let's formulate a new mechanism, Yep. You actually, human beings are so good at learning things. You can actually not know a goddamn thing, and you can have a problem, and you can watch a child do this. You can watch a baby that is nonverbal. You can watch a toddler do this. Like, give them a thing, have a problem, have like a ball stuck inside a box that they don't know how to open the box, right?
Right.
You can watch them just try shit. They'll try to bite it, they'll lick it, they'll stick a finger in it. Like, they'll do all kind of shit, right? Just to try to figure it out. Like, they naturally know how to do this. And when they get it done, they'll remember it. They'll remember how to do it.
Yep.
The next time, that's what you get. That's baked in the operating system, man. You don't have to teach them anything.
Yeah.
You just have to not teach them. You know what I'm saying? You can't. Here's what happens. You take a small child, you send them into school, you teach them something, and this is the way it works, right? And it works because of it's a scaling issue, and it's based, again, we could do a whole podcast on this. It's based on efficiency mechanisms from factories, because that's how this all came about, is that back in the early 1900s, they sent someone into a factory. They said, this one worker does things 100 times faster than these other workers do. Yep. Figure out why. And what that dude did, and I can't remember his name, what he did literally, he wrote down every single step the person did, and then he went and taught everybody verbatim, do this step, then this step, then this step, and this step, right? And you get everybody in an equal playing field that way, but nobody understands why they're doing any of the shit they're doing. Right? So we took that and applied it to school. And it's very scalable, right? You can go up on the board and you can say 2 + 2 = 4. Right. And you can show them how to do that every time. Right. And you can have them, memorize this very simple step process on how to do this. Right. But what you're doing is you're taking away the experimentation from them. And now you're slapping, it's even worse. You're slapping their hand when they try to experiment and do this in a different way, because you're only going to teach them in fact, most of the times the teachers don't even really understand the thing they're teaching all that well. They understand how to teach it in the way they've been taught to teach it. Right. But since they've never actually gone through the process themselves to actually understand the thing, they can't even explain it any other way. So they get angry at the student when the student starts asking questions, and you become a bad student. You see this path we're going down?
Yep.
This leads to where we are today, because you have people who have been taught their whole life, do it the way I told you and no other way. So they don't know how to experiment. They've forgotten the thing that they were born with, which is how to experiment with shit.
Right. And what that does is it makes people susceptible to, if they believe that somebody is aligned with their beliefs or values or whatever, and that somebody tells them this is the way things are,
right,
then they
get feared. They get scared. I'm going to do it the right way. I've got to do it the way this guy says.
Absolutely. Yep. And that leaves you with people who don't question the things that they hear from people that they are, whether it be religious leaders, political leaders, or even just like, let's just say leadership in the company you work for, or
church. So yeah. This dovetails so well with society. This dovetails so well with society too, because you have this secondary effect where when you raise people like this, when you teach them as a small child not to question authority, they don't question authority.
Right.
So you can tell them whatever silly shit you want to tell them, and they just go along with it, even if they don't believe it. They're like, I just need to go along with the flow. Don't want to rock the boat. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you ever did this or not, but my kids believed in Santa Claus when they were little,
sure,
right? And I know I did this. I know other parents have done this, but kids get to a certain age where they'll tell you, "I don't think Santa Claus is real."
Right.
And I remember saying this, and again, I'm not the only one that I know of that said this, but it's like, well, Santa Claus doesn't bring presents to kids that don't believe in him. Yeah. And they're like, oh, no, I know Santa Claus is real. It's just like you're saying, though.
Yeah, you're indoctrinating them.
Yes, absolutely.
And you don't even realize the harm you're doing. Like, I did the same thing with my kids. I didn't realize the harm I was doing. But it's because this is what I was talking about in one of the other episodes, like I try to question everything. I don't wash myself the way my mother taught me, because I don't think it's the most efficient way to do it. And I feel like you should be doing that with everything you should at least put some cursory thought into everything you do in your life. Why do I do it this way? A lot of times you'll find it's because just the way you saw somebody do it. And so that's the way I do it. There might be a better fucking way, right. And you just never tried it.
Well, and again, I'm going to pull this back to talking about wealth inequality for just a minute, but this is a good segue, because just like you were talking about with your kids and looking at how you kind of moved from living with your family in order to being on your own and dealing with your own expenses and life experiences and everything, your kids don't have it, the environment in which they were in. And then kids today is even different. And I say kids, I'm talking about, your 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are kind of figuring out how to support themselves in some cases. The environment is different. So just like you're describing, you can't always go into it and say, well, I'm going to do it this way because this is what's always worked, when suddenly the environment which you're trying to do that thing in has changed.
Yep.
I've seen, people from older generations that will complain about, millennials or Gen Z, and talk about how, they don't, there's not as many, people getting married as young or having as many babies, or not as much home ownership, or, they don't do all these things that the people in older generations did before. And they see it as a failing of the younger generation, right, without taking into account the environment in which that's occurring.
Yeah. I mean, like people don't realize, like boomers are bad about this. They don't realize they used to could go see a concert for, $15 or even I could used to go see a concert. I saw Pantera and Typo Negative live back when everybody was alive. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think I spent $20 on the ticket. I certainly didn't spend any more than that. I was broke as shit. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Now, I don't know what Pantera tickets go for. If they're still touring now. I know they toured again for a while with right. Charlie Benanate or whatever from Anthrax. But if they are, I'm sure the tickets are fucking astronomical. They're at least 10 times that. Probably more like 20 times that. So it's like, kids can't afford to go do the things that their parents or grandparents did.
I went to a Linkin Park concert that this past was in May of this year, and there was 5 of us total that went. And it cost nearly $800 for the 5 of us to go to that concert. And it wasn't like we were way up, like with fantastic seats or anything. This was just, it wasn't nosebleed, but it was like, it wasn't close to the stage right. or anything either, And I could have paid more if I, But yeah, to that point, that's absolutely right.
The thing about the wealth inequality is really this: like, there is no end to it. Okay, so there is no end game for the billionaires. Like the billionaire, like, just, dude, people don't have a conception of this shit. And I don't care where you stand on him. I will tell you flat out, I despise Donald Trump. I don't hate him. I don't really hate anybody, I don't think, because it just doesn't make any logical sense to hate someone, because it's really not their fault on some level. But I think he's a despicable human being. But people need to realize, when they think Donald Trump is on the side of the poor people, you need to understand this man has no conception of what your life is like. This is a man who I can almost guarantee you has never shaved himself. I want you to imagine Donald Trump shaving his own fucking neck. Yeah. The fact that he does not have razor cuts every single time he steps in front of a camera makes me think the man has never shaved himself, okay? Mm. Because he's never stepped foot in a grocery store to buy shit,
right?
Okay? This is a man who does not have any conception of what your life is like at all.
Right. And, you and I had a conversation a while back, and I'm going to kind of rehash this here because I think it's really relevant to what you're saying. You and I have both, as we talked about earlier, have lived at points in our lives where if we were to miss a paycheck, it would have been catastrophic.
Yep.
I'm
not far from that now, to be honest with you.
Fair enough. But we've lived in times where I wouldn't say, maybe we were below the poverty line.
Yeah, I was definitely below poverty.
I don't know where it was at that time, so I can't say for sure. But we were poor. Let's just leave it there. We'll just say we were poor. And you and I had a conversation. This was back when you lived in Florida, and we were just talking about how, we both had fairly good paying jobs at that point. And you and I were going to pick up a pizza or a couple of pizzas for everybody. And we were just talking about how we are not rich. I just want to be clear. Like, I feel like I'm comfortable, and, I feel kind of proud of where I am from where I've been. And I think realistically can look at it and say that there's a lot of luck that was involved with me being where I am. But I'm comfortable in that if I missed a paycheck today, I've got some savings. I've got stuff I can lean on. I've got, that I don't, I'm not worried about how I'm going to support myself if that paycheck didn't come. And you and I were talking about like going to the grocery store. And I remember my mom, when I was a kid, would go to the grocery store and with a calculator in her she had a little coupon, like a little accordion fold thing with coupons in it, and she would go through and, she would put in her calculator everything she put in the cart because she had X number of dollars to spend on groceries. That was her budget and she couldn't go over it. And they would go on the day they got their paycheck on Fridays and go grocery shopping, and it had to be under X number of dollars. And sometimes you put stuff back if it was going to be more than that. And you didn't go to the grocery store again until the next Friday when you got the next paycheck. And then you and I were talking about how, I'll go to buy groceries and I know about how much I spend, but I've never, well, I shouldn't say never, not in recent history have I put something back because it was too much. Or have I said, oh, you know what? This is groceries are expensive now, but like this is $250 and I really can't spend more than $200, so I got to put a bunch of stuff back. Or certainly never.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I do not have a tight budget on much of anything anymore. Actually, it's like there's always wiggle room somewhere because
So to some level, I mean, there are a lot of people that do that. There are people that literally have cash and change in their pocket, and they can't spend more than what's in their pocket.
Yep.
And to a certain level, you and I, as much as we might try, we're somewhat disconnected from those people in that we don't know what it's like to be them today in what they're dealing with.
But we know enough about what our past was like that we can empathize with them.
Absolutely. And that's really important. So you can go a step above us and look at people who work for a living, but these are the doctors and attorneys and small business owners and other people who might be multimillionaires, but they still work for a living. And they probably have a little bit of a hard time connecting with where we are. You know what I mean? Because these are people that have their second or third homes and that, they live in a gated community and, other things that, they have different problems, but they still have problems, but they have different problems than we do. And they probably don't connect with the things that we deal with. The problem when we talk about that chasm between the people who are the lowest in poverty that need things like SNAP and welfare to people who are these billionaires who are worth today 18 times what they were worth, 45 years ago, that gap keeps growing, is that the disconnect between each level becomes wider and wider. And the people who are in those positions of power, that not only do they not, as you said, have that history to fall back on, but even if they did have people, relatives, ancestors that had that starts because there's so much is being passed down, being accumulated and hoarded and passed down, that nobody with their last name basically in memory has had those problems. So there is no understanding or empathy of what these great masses of people are actually dealing with.
And I think this is one of the reasons that you have people say billionaires shouldn't exist, which I kind of agree. Like once you get to a certain amount of wealth, it's the amount of power you have concentrated is so obscene that we are literally in a place where a human being should not have that level of power. Like I'll just give you an example. If you're a billionaire, if you're literally a billionaire, yes, I know people are going to say, oh, but they don't have, as long as they have $1 billion in the bank. Of course not. But if I can take the stocks I have, and if I can take out a loan for 250 million of it or 500 million of it or whatever, I can do whatever the fuck I want. So I could take those stocks, right? And the only thing preventing me from going to an international arms dealer and buying a bunch of fucking arms and building my own fucking military is literally my own fucking self. Like nothing else is stopping me. The government isn't going to stop. You got $500 million fucking dollars. Like the government ain't going to stop you. You could buy a government for that amount of money.
Well, and you talked about the stock market too. So like that 1%, the top 1% of the wealthiest 1% is what I'm trying to say, owns 50% of all the stock in all the stock market.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
So the thing is, so a lot of times you'll hear, I've heard this recently from our president, but you hear it a lot that people will say, well, I don't understand why there's so many poor people. The economy is doing great. But by economy, what they mean is
stock market.
Stock market's doing great. And the thing is, those people that are in poverty, they're not participating.
Well, it doesn't even matter because the stock market it's not a real fucking thing. It's imaginary fucking numbers. Like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, trust me, I'm telling you, if for the 5 people that listen to this goddamn podcast, I'm telling you, in the next year, something very, very fucking bad is going to happen in the stock market. Like, someone else has already made that bet. I'm just following their thread. But it is the guy who did The Big Short, which he did fucking correctly call that. But his detractors are going to say he has correctly called 7 out of the last 3 financial crises. So So I do understand that perspective as well, but I'm looking, like, I'm not being in a comment. I'm looking at all these indicators. I'm scared shitless. I fully believe there's going to be a crash, and you're going to see that the stock market actually means nothing because all of these people who are rich on paper are all of a sudden not going to be rich on paper, and there's going to be some very bad things that happen.
And I understand what you mean when you're talking about their imaginary numbers. I mean, they're not meaningless. Obviously, if you buy a portion of a company, buying their stock at one price and you sell it for more, then you get the money for that.
You've successfully tricked someone else into paying more for your imaginary thing.
I understand, but it's. I don't want to dive too far into this because I think we could have a long conversation about it, but what I think the point you're trying to make is that the fluctuations in the stock market are mostly there all because of almost like chaos theory. Like, what's happening there is that you've got so many people that are in computers and algorithms and AI and institutions that are buying and selling based on different types of information that it's unpredictable, and it's not necessarily a firm indicator of actually how valuable something is.
I mean, if you want to get right down to the crux of it, it's any type of interest, okay, of any kind, whether it be tax interest or inflation or investment interest. Any type of interest is necessarily made up. What you're doing is you're making a bet. You're making a bet that in the future this thing will be better than it is now. And so you're buying today the right to sell that thing in the future at a higher value than it is today, right? That you're making a bet, okay? All I'm saying is that, we can go as deeply as you want to go on this, but from at a very basic level, the thing you're betting on is a completely made up number, right? So like, yes, the business has certain assets, certain physical assets, which have value. They also have ephemeral assets, which also have value. The organization structure, the IP, all those things also have real fucking value. I'm not saying they don't have value. I'm saying the number you're applying to that value is completely fucking made up. Okay. And it's going to be made up in the future, and it was made up in the past. Okay. Yeah. And the thing that you are buying, like when you sell it and you get the thing for that is money, and that is also completely fucking made up. So I'm not suggesting you can't trade this made up thing for a real thing of actual value. I'm just suggesting the fucking thing is made up to start with.
Well, right.
So it has no intrinsic value, and what we're currently doing is destroying a planet which does have intrinsic value for something that has no intrinsic value. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm kind of suggesting, like, God, loathe for me to say this because I'm not a big Star Trek fan.
Oh no!
But I do think they had this part of it right. Like, as long as there is money, there's the ability to exploit it. We have to figure out a way to where everyone is competent. Like, we live in a world where we have enough abundance, where we could compensate everybody equitably for their part in this world. Yep. We could do that.
Yep.
We're just not doing it.
Yep.
Let's fucking do it. Like there's people saying, I know I'm gonna have people, like, for all 4 people who listen to this, one of them might get mad enough to actually respond. There's problems with this, right? There's corruption inherent. Of course there is. We got to solve that problem. I'm saying let's move in that direction. Let's move in the direction of moneyless society, right? Where we have mechanisms to solve the corruption problem, right? And where everybody is paid fairly. Like. Yes, there are people going to be trying to exploit the system. Fucking slap them down. Like, I don't know how we got to such a place to where every human being is so unabashedly fucking selfish.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is that, but here's something I want to touch on something you said, because I've thought about this a lot. A lot of times we want to blame the poor people for where they are being poor, and yet we completely absolve the rich people who continue to build their riches off of those poor people. And you were talking about how the richer you get, the more power you have, and we have this connection of, as much as we might try to fight it, there is going to be just such a strong, tight connection between your economy and politics. And something that's happening more recently is that these billionaires who have all this money is starting to use so much more of that money to influence politics as well, and spending the money there. Because, and this is where you're talking about being selfish, lobbying has been around for about as long as there's been governments, right? You have people that go and, try to represent the interests of whoever they're representing. Sure. But it has gotten to the point where only the richest of people have enough money to be able to truly get the attention of the people in power.
Yep.
So, like, if you look at, and I've just got some data in front of me, but if you look at like the 2000, 2004, 2008 elections, the presidential elections in the US, there was almost no money that was spent by billionaires in the US towards political campaigns. Like, it basically didn't happen at that point, and really didn't happen before that either. But just looking at since 2000, it really didn't happen until 2012. And then suddenly it went from next to nothing. Like, we're talking about billionaires spending, when I say next to nothing, let's say less than $20 million total in all spending by all billionaires to those political campaigns ahead of time. 2012, it bumped up to about $250 million. So that was a huge bump. In 2024, it was $2.5 billion was spent towards politics, towards political campaigns, towards lobbying, towards all that. So you've got all these
basically just direct bribes at this point.
Well, they really are. It's I'll give you all this money if you'll try to enact laws for me that will benefit me.
Or I'll give you this cushy position when you get out of Congress where you really don't have to do anything, but you make $2 million a year just to sit around and be an advisor on our board or whatever.
So here's the thing.
I got to ask this question. I don't know. Hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder here.
No, go ahead.
Do you know what year Citizen United happened?
I don't. Because
that's often talked about as the reason this is happening.
And that may be, and I don't have that in front of me, but we have this perspective though for some reason, and I don't understand it, but I would say that most people have this perspective, is that we want to vilify workers when they want more money, but we don't vilify the billionaires who want more money.
Yep.
And so, like, again, I bring this back to baseball a lot. I love baseball, okay? It is what it is. But we will hate a baseball player who signs a $250 million contract. We hate the millionaire baseball players who go out and play the game, but we love the billionaire team owners who don't want to pay those salaries. And you know what I mean? Like, and that is almost universal. People always want to talk about how, baseball players are getting paid millions of dollars to play a game, quote unquote. Right. And I don't want to go into all that about the fact that that it's incredible amount of skill and that, it's actually a lot of hard work and, and they're on the road and they're away from their families, blah, 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 blah. They're being paid as entertainers, but that's really what it comes down to. But that being said, just the idea of if you talked about somebody who made $2 billion in the stock market versus somebody who made $2 million as a baseball player, people are going to hate the baseball player for making millions of dollars, quote unquote, playing a game. That's all that the stock market person is doing. They're going out there.
They're somehow equating the baseball playing person is unskilled and unintelligent, and the stock market person is some kind of genius. When the truth of the matter is, most stockbrokers actually never make any really profitable trades. Like so it's anyway. I think though the core problem is the idea that money is how we should be rewarding this. Like I'm just spitballing this because I really have not put an enormous amount of thought into this. But when I say people should be compensated equitably, honestly, this is what I've told many bosses, and it's never happened yet. I don't expect it's ever going to happen. But I've told them, look, man, I just want to be paid whatever you think I'm worth. Okay? So just do this calculus, all right? Take what I do in a given day as well as I do it, and think to yourself, what quantity and quality of people do I need to replace this person, right? And whatever that number comes up to, pay me slightly less than that, right? I'm happy with that, okay? Never to this day has that happened. But that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like if you got a baseball player, like that person is influencing millions of people. Okay. Now I'm not saying they should live in a mansion. I think they should live just like everybody else, but they're going to have certain things that other people don't have. For example, they're going to have a whole team of trainers and doctors and professionals keeping after them. They're going to be able to fly probably on private jets because guess what? They got to be at places much faster than you have to be at places. Like there are perks to that, but it shouldn't be a fucking Bentley. Like that's you don't need a fucking Bentley. You need the same car everybody else has. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm saying this as a person who loves fast cars and actually has a fast car sitting out in the driveway right now that I don't fucking need. I am fine with not having, like, if you said to me today, Brian, take every luxury you have and throw them all in the trash, but here's what I'm going to give you. You will get to spend half of every single day. No, better yet, you'll get to spend as much time every single day doing the thing that makes you whole, that makes you feel like this is the thing you were put on earth to do. You get to do that every fucking day as much as you want. You get to, if that's spending time with your family, spend time with your family. If that's petting your fucking dog, pet your fucking dog. If that's writing a new book, write a new book. If that's inventing the cure for cancer, invent the cure for cancer. But you get to do the thing that makes you feel like a complete human being with all of your fucking time and all of your fucking effort. I'd take that bet. I'd take that bargain every single fucking day.
Yes, I would too. But I think this is the part where, like on a microscopic level, or just, anecdotal, I think that you could give that option to most people and they would take it. Okay. Maybe not everybody, because some people love their luxury items, right? But in general, I think most people would take that. But there are things that must be done in this world that people don't want to do. There are people that collect trash or clean toilets, or, there are just things that need to be done in the world that people don't want to do.
Sure.
And if you let everybody do only the things that fulfilled them and nothing else, then those things which don't fulfill anybody are never going to get done.
Totally agree. So I'm not suggesting we can do this today. I'm suggesting that should be the fucking goal.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't that be the goal? Right. And so this is somewhere where weirdly weirdly, I'm kind of in agreement with Elon Musk on this. Like, I do think that is the ultimate goal. We need to be in a place to where no one has to work ever, and we just have robots doing all the shit that nobody wants to do. Right? You get to do the thing that makes that brings the unique you into the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's, I believe completely that every human being is a full, unique individual, an individual that has never occurred before and will never occur again. And I think we waste that capital almost 100% of the time, because we shove people into these little boxes. You know, you're a doctor, or you're a lawyer, or you're a janitor, or whatever, and you never get the magic that makes them special out of that, because they're forced into this mold, right? So I'm just saying that's the society we should be heading for. And if we set that as a goal, right, then you can make guideposts along the way.
Right.
You can say, oh, so the first step to doing that may be, let's do UBI, but it's UBI that's very, very basic. You're not going to be comfortable. You're not going to like it.
Universal basic income.
Right.
Okay.
You're not going to like it. It's not going to be a good place. You're going to wish you weren't there, but you can just do that forever. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, oh, well, we still need, people to be janitors. That's fine. This is very unattractive. Living on UBI is very unattractive, right? Yeah. Not because we're looking down on those people or anything like that. It just is. Like, you're not living in a nice place. You don't have nice things, but you have dignity.
You're not dying,
right? You have and you have dignity. I'm not saying you have to shower outdoors or any shit like that. I'm saying give people basic human dignity.
Yeah.
But it's not comfortable, right? You don't have a TV, okay? Yeah. If you want those things, then employers will have to start offering a pay arrangement that attracts people to these shitty jobs.
Yeah.
And employers who have jobs that people really want to do probably don't have to offer much of anything, right? Maybe they offer, a piece of the pie at the end when you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I would really like to see a society where more people are pulling oars in the same direction. Where if a person is working at a company, it's because they kind of believe in what they're doing.
Right.
Right. Now I know you're never going to get that for janitors or whatever, which is why I'm not suggesting that's a career path. I'm suggesting that's a thing for people who don't really want to do anything else. Right. But don't really mind doing this shit for what they're paying. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like if you're okay with working 8 hours a week or something for the pay, at a convenience store for the pay they're giving you, so be it. That's fine. Yep. Do all your other stuff on your own time. Right. And I'm not unrealistic about this. I realize there are economic, situation. There are economic problems here that have to be solved. I get that. I'm just saying what we're doing now fucking isn't working. It's obvious it's not working. Right? We got to, the level of thinking that got us into this problem is not going to get it out of it. You got to think of something new. Okay. And I'm suggesting the fucking problem is actually money. This ephemeral fucking thing that we're using to represent all scarcity in society. Right. Let's just get rid of that. That's the end goal. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so let's take steps to go down that road. That's kind of what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a noble goal, right? To do that, but it's probably one of those things that you never completely get there. It's like you walk halfway from here to the wall, and then the next second you walk halfway again, and you keep getting closer and you keep getting closer, but you probably never actually get there.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
But it's probably because there are a lot of details to it that, just for example, and there are, just like we were talking about the jobs that somebody has to do. Or in some cases, there are jobs that you need to have enough of somebody's to do it, right? You got to have, whatever it is. Let's just say taxi drivers, right? Maybe you don't have enough people that love to drive people around a city to cover the job that needs to be done, or whatever it is, right? I mean, there's going to be things where eventually, if you're going to keep everything functioning the way it needs to function, you have to start regulating it in some way, right?
Well, no, okay. So I think you regulate, but I mean, I'm just thinking about this a little more now because my mind's actually working on it now. Like so this idea that we're always going to have money, I think is just is wrong from another perspective too, because it's like this is something else capitalism provides is a lot of waste. Like, how many fucking random plastic doodads for whatever have you bought in your life that you've bought the exact same thing? Like, I must have bought 47 Keurig machines. You know what I'm saying? Because the fucking things break like once every 6 months, right? So you have to buy a new, because they're not serviceable. So you have to buy a new one, right? Imagine if instead of, because part of that's factored in. Like, the company fucking knows this shit. They just like the light bulb situation, right? They know this shit. They know the thing's they can make the thing last longer. They can make it last less long, right? And it's in their best interest to make it last less long. So what if we just built things that everybody needed, and there's one of the fucking things, right? And it works great. Like, it's a fucking whatever. It works as good as the thing can fucking work, right? And I'm not saying we don't ever try to improve it, but we don't build 5,000 of them at different quality levels. We build one that lasts basically for fucking ever. You know what I'm saying? I think capitalism has led us to a place also where we're doing things very suboptimally if the goal is that everybody should be able to live a dignified life.
So a lot of what you're describing, though, a lot of people would start leaning towards saying that's communism. Okay.
Sure.
So we hadn't really talked about that. So let's talk about what communism is and how what you're saying is and isn't. And then we can talk about some of the things that are considered pros and cons of communism. I mean, what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing you say is that essentially everybody should be allowed to do the thing that makes them happy. Yeah, I'm just keeping it simple, right? And that in doing that, the government will make sure, or the economy, however you want to look at it, but the government economic overseer will make sure that you have what you need to survive and thrive in doing the thing that makes you happy.
Yes, with some additional component of oversight, because without that, the government will necessarily become, like every communist government in the world, a big corrupted, bloated.
But let's just assume that's efficient, okay? With whatever oversight, let's just pretend that everything, and it is money. I mean, but I know what you're saying. Maybe if you can figure out how to take money out of the completely, but let's just assume that, like, an interim step, if you will, that everything that everybody earns gets thrown into a pot, and that pot is split up equally in goods and services that are needed in order for people to thrive.
Yeah, I wouldn't say equally. I mean, it's apportioned according to need.
Okay.
Because equally says everybody has, every different variety of television in their house. Like, however many of them we make, everybody gets one. You know what I'm saying? That's equal. I don't think that's correct. I think it's apportioned according to need, right? So everybody needs the thing, they get the thing, okay? And they get basically the thing they need. Like, if you have 6 people in your household, you need an SUV, right? You don't need
fair.
You don't. All right, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
If you're if you're a CEO of a major organization, you get a private jet to fly around to all the facilities in the world. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm not saying it's one size fits all. I'm saying the size fits the need. So if you decide, I think I want to play guitar, you go down to the local guitar store, you pick out your guitar, you get your guitar, you bring it home, you play the guitar. It's the same guitar that everybody has. Maybe there's a higher quality one for the people who are professional musicians that they get when they've proven they're influencing a certain number of people or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But everybody gets the guitar, right? But you play it once and you decide you don't want to play it again, right? Well, the guitar we're in a society we can do this now. The guitar tracks its use. So when the guitar knows it hasn't been used in 2 months, it phones home and says, "Hey, I haven't been used in 2 months. Maybe you should tell this guy to take the guitar back." And then you get an email that says, "Hey, please either play the fucking guitar or bring the guitar back." Yeah. Right? Shit like that. I'm saying we're smart. We can figure out solutions to all these problems. I don't think anybody's tried enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge change that you're talking about, though. And
Yeah, I agree.
And if you think through, and I can't help but like go into like the economics of like the supply chain of something like what you're talking about, because with a guitar, okay, you're going to have some factory that makes guitars, and there are people that work there. So what if there's not enough people that have that desire to work in a factory? So then you don't have guitars being made. So then you have,
again,
you know what I mean? Like,
again, this is assuming that we have robots that can basically do everything non-creative that a human can do. Okay, I'm just saying. Like,
Yeah.
we have factories that build cars with almost no human input. That's a very complicated fucking machine to put together with no human input. If we can do that, we can do a fucking guitar. Okay, so I'm just saying there are solutions to these problems. There's been no will to implement these solutions.
Yeah.
That's my point. So, and I think the part of the reason there has been no will is we've demonized certain economic systems in this country, and I think we've done it unfairly. Yes, they all have problems with corruption, and the more power you concentrate into any one entity, the more attractive corruption becomes, right? And this is why communism, especially, is so impervious or so susceptible to corruption, because you are, and authoritarianism too, because you're consolidating power. Like in most communist structures, it's consolidated in like a board or, like a bureau or something, some top level structure. But, authoritarianism is in one person. Either way, corruption is almost impossible to avoid in those situations. So I'm suggesting you have to take a lot more care into developing a corruption-free infrastructure. But I'm saying we in America, we almost have this idea that it's inevitable that, communism is just equals corruption and socialism equals corruption. I don't think that's true at all. I just think we haven't given them nobody with, I think, very good intentions has ever tried to use those two systems as a it's Marx, I think, had pretty good intentions, and I think pretty much everybody that has used him has talked about it after him has not.
Yeah, I mean, and it's pretty easy. I mean, I think most people don't want to think too hard about something. And if you can find a litmus test or particular indicators that are going to lead you one way or another, people are just going to use that. And the for the most part, when we think of communist countries, we think of, Soviet Union or Cuba or other countries in which we literally fought, wars, whether they be physical wars or like the Cold War or things like that against these. These were our adversaries. So of course we want to think with our ethnocentrism that, hey, democracy won over and that, we're the good guys and those are the bad guys. So it's easy to equate communism and socialism with being the bad guys. But like you said, those are individual instances of an idea. It's not that the idea was corrupt or that it was evil. It doesn't have any value, moral value one way or another. It's just a different way to look at it. Now, the other thing that people will look at, and when you talk about those things being demonized, again, when we talked about how a lot of people want to believe that in a democracy, that if you work hard or you have good ideas or whatever, you can be successful.
Right.
And that when you are getting the fruits of your own labor, and that especially when you look at something that is much more communistic, then what you're talking about is that you're contributing to a society, not to your own success. So a lot of people, because like you said earlier, so many people, we have gotten so selfish. We don't believe really in contributing to society as much as we believe in contributing to our own, right? Whether that be ourselves or our family or whatever. So a lot of people believe, and I don't know whether this is right or wrong, but a lot of people believe that if you're working for somebody else and the fruits of your labor go elsewhere, then people won't work as hard, or they won't put as much effort in. There won't be as much innovation.
They're doing that now. They're doing that fucking now. When you go to fucking do your shift at Walmart, you're not making yourself richer.
No, I get it.
I mean, it's the same fucking thing. You're doing it now. Here's the problem I think most people have, and I do understand this point of view because I've had it as well. Most people, I think, have this point of view that if you tell people they don't have to work anymore, everybody's going to immediately quit their job and become lazy and sit around and do nothing.
Yeah.
And I will grant you, some percentage of people are going to do that.
I will do that for the first few weeks.
And maybe I will too. I mean, some percentage of people are going to do that continually, though.
Yeah.
But let me tell you something. Some percentage of people are doing that now. Okay.
Yep.
So, and some percentage of people are doing that now while they're at work.
That's true.
Okay. So I don't think the situation is going to get any worse. I think it's going to probably get better because, like, here's kind of the philosophy or the perspective, two perspectives really I'd like to throw out there. One is that imagine you have a farmer who works hard every fucking day, right? Farmers are probably the hardest working people in this country.
Yeah.
Like they're working their ass off every fucking day, right? And they let's just say they're a soybean farmer. And they're a small soybean farmer. So they've grown their entire crop as soybean, right? They spent all year, they got a good crop comes in, and Trump applies tariffs and they can't sell their soybeans. Yeah. And then China buys their soybeans from Argentina, right? This farmer has lost all of their fucking income. It is at no fault of their own that they lost all their income.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Okay. They worked hard. They should not be punished for that. But in our current society, they're going to be punished. Okay. I'm suggesting if there were 15 of those in a cooperative situation and they all grew different crops, right?
Yeah.
This problem would not occur. Okay. Because they would all share the fruits of their labors and no one farmer would be taken out by any freak occurrence. Okay. I'm suggesting we build a society like that. Right. And if some percentage of them aren't able or unwilling, which is really the same thing. If you look at a human being and you say, well, this person doesn't have no arms and no legs, what the fuck are they going to do? Right. Yeah. They can't work. Okay. Great. Okay. This person is mentally incapable of interacting with another human being without flying into a complete panic attack and losing their shit and crumpling into a ball and crying.
Right.
They're both disabled. Okay.
I agree.
This other person just has had such a shitty life that they're so fucking cynical. They don't think anybody likes them and they don't like anybody else. And they think their life is worthless and they're worthless and therefore everybody else is worthless. And they're going to treat everybody they come in contact with like shit. Guess what? That person's also disabled and should not be at work. Do you want to interact with that human being? I sure as fuck don't. I've been working with people who don't want to be there my whole fucking life. And if I could get them out of there, I fucking would. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just saying, that's part of the philosophy is that people think that you know there are people who are just lazy and are not going to work. I don't think that's the case. I know it's not the case for me. I know it's not the case for anybody who I know who is a highly motivated person. Right? They're going to continue doing stuff. And I solemnly believe people who are not highly motivated people are not highly motivated because they haven't found their fucking thing yet. And if you just give them time to find their fucking thing, they're going to do something amazing. But you've got to give them time and the opportunity.
Yeah. And you know, when we look at what we see currently economically, especially when you have people that are struggling to pay some of their bills because of the gap between pay and expenses, suddenly you got people that are having to take on second jobs or side hustles or I heard a term yesterday, polyemployment.
God almighty.
Yeah.
This shit's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
The shit we're doing and trying to pass it off as normal is fucking
I know. But people are doing that. That takes away from all of that time you were talking about. You know, and it becomes, it feeds off of itself because if it requires you now working 12 hours a day to make what it takes to get by when it used to be 8 hours a day, well, not only does that there's an opportunity cost to that. It's not, you don't have an unlimited number of hours a day that you can work. So, okay. Yeah, we tend to look at the you know, you hear the story of the single mother who works 2 jobs just to feed her kids, but then you also have to realize that Well, those extra 4 hours that she's working in a part-time job every day, well, that's time she's not spending with those kids.
Yep.
So does that mean she has to pay for somebody else to watch them?
And
Not everybody has a family member that's willing to do that. Those
well, I
types
mean,
of
this is
things.
this is a multiplicative problem in that
Right.
case, because you got a parent who, as a single parent, right, who is raising their child, trying to raise their children, but they spend so much time working, they're not there raising their children. So their children's being raised by television and by friends and by the people they meet on the street. So you have a new generation of people who's grown up without the skills they should have had.
Right.
And you're bankrupting the younger generation. And this is what they talk about. Like when they talk about systemic racism, people don't understand this. It's not, there's systemic classism too, but it's like kind of the same thing, because if you hurt the current generation of parents, you're necessarily hurting the next generation.
Yes.
And it just continues on. It never stops,
Yeah, and there's that phrase, a rising tide lifts all ships, but it's also the opposite, right?
Yep.
So just the ability to figure out how to raise that bare minimum life that people need to live.
Yep. I mean,
benefits all.
Yeah, and we can elevate ourselves into a whole new place.
Yeah.
Like one of the things about reading some of these older, historical things that I'm reading now is it gives me a much greater perspective for just how awful things were then and how much better they are now.
Yeah.
Like, they were talking about in the Mexican-American War, like people signed up, they marched all the way down there, fucking fought, and when their enlistment ran out, they were just out of the army. They were in a foreign fucking country where they were getting shot at and were out of the army. Yeah. You can either re-enlist and we're treating you like shit. They have no idea how badly they were treated back then, but we're treating them like shit. So you can re-enlist or you can hoof it all the way back home from a foreign country. Guess what? 7 out of 11 regiments hoofed it back to their foreign country. Wow. Like that's how bad the conditions were. Right. So you can just hear that anecdote. And that was, not even 200 years ago. You can hear that anecdote and realize how far we've come in that period of time. Right. Like we're much better off than we were now. We could have that same level of improvement in 200 years or even less in, 100 years. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and I think, in a lot of ways, when you talk about, human rights or just the human condition and our tolerance for suffering, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
You can look at things like you mentioned systemic racism, and it certainly still exists, but and I think you and I had this conversation again. It was a different episode or just, some other time.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid in high school, and I went to a rural area high school, but when I was a kid in high school, a interracial relationship was a big deal.
Yeah, me too.
It was something, if a white girl was dating an African American guy, then she was called all sorts of names, and it was really negative, and there was a huge stigma.
Yeah, just to add to this, it's like it was in the 90s when we graduated, right?
Yep.
And I remember at the time it being just as rare to have someone interracial in your high school as it was to have someone with AIDS in your high school.
Oh yeah,
it was that rare.
Yeah. And on top of that, like nobody was gay.
Right. Yeah. you knew who was gay,
right? But nobody
was out.
Exactly. And I look at that with I've got kids that are in high school now, and it's so much of those things in high school have become a lot more accepted. I'm not saying they're universally accepted,
right?
But in general, the way that we look at things like interracial relationships or homosexual relationships is more positive today than it was in the 90s. We've made the right path there.
Yep.
But we're not economically. We are not going in the right direction economically. So I feel like socially, eventually we're going to get somewhere better. We're going to keep moving better. We're deciding from the human condition and trying to understand, like I said, reducing suffering.
I would disagree with you a little bit on the economic. I mean, we're not doing better now than we were in high school, but we are still in the grand scheme of things on an upward trajectory. Like, because in the 1800s, right? It was way worse than it is now. You had kids in mines, right? Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, so it was way worse then than it is now. We came a long. FDR brought us a very long way with his New Deal, right? So and that and the I mentioned this in passing a different time, but that and our collective delusion after World War II that we were a incredibly moral and upstanding nation that helped other people and had good moral values and
because
stuff.
we weren't committing genocide like some people, right?
Yeah, and we had stopped it. We won the war,
right.
So all of that made us feel real good about ourselves, and we had this societal. This is again why I think culture is the most powerful thing in this world. We had this societal culture of we're going to do better. We're good. We're going to do good things, right?
Yep.
And so for a long time that actually held, and we did a lot of good things, and we brought society into some new places. I really think without World War II, we probably would not have had, the repeal of Jim Crow and women getting the ability to vote and things like that. I think a lot of those things and the 60s, being, all free and all that kind of stuff, the idea that, all the flower children and all that kind of stuff, all the hippie values, those really did have an effect. They really did turn things around and make things better.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing right now, I think, is a big backlash amongst people who didn't buy into those things. And they didn't buy into those things, and then the world became very scary because a lot of new things happened, right? And then on top of the world being scary and they're not buying into those things, you add the pressure cooker of this media landscape and the increasing inequality and their lives getting worse and them not understanding how things work now. And and billionaires just taking advantage of this shit. And you get into this place right now where it is going backwards a little bit because these people are exerting their anger. Right. They're making themselves known, And I mean, just to be clear, if they win, if you're on the right, if you're listening to this now, if Trump gets what he wants and the Republican Party gets what they want, we're going to be in a theocracy where they're not just going to come for the brown people. Like there's going to be white people that are gone too. And if you think differently than the regime, you're going to be gone. So you just be aware of that. Be aware this is what you're ushering in and be okay with that when it comes because it is coming. Okay. This is not something to where it reverses. These people don't reverse on their own. That's never happened in history. So let's be clear on that. Okay. This could go a very bad way if they win.
Oh yeah.
But if they don't win, I do think we're going to continue. And I think eventually we're going to continue anyway, because the bottom line is there are 320 million people in this country, 380 million or whatever. There's 300 some odd million people in this country, right? There's not enough military to keep them all in line. Okay. So, we're very diverse people. Yeah. A lot of us don't like get along with each other all that well to start with, even in the best of circumstances. Yeah. There's no fucking way you're going to get everybody to believe the same thing. It's just not going to happen.
But, here's the thing that I wish that everybody could agree on. And it seems like a really simple thing, but people don't agree on this, is that every human being has intrinsic value that's not based on what they can provide you.
Yep.
And that seems so simple. It just seems easy to buy into that. But so much of what you're talking about, going back to when you're talking about as long as you have somebody to look down upon, then people can look down upon you. And, it's like you always want to think that you're better than somebody else. And we talk about the people that are on government assistance, and we want, people look down on those people because they need help. And they want to talk about whether they deserve that help or not. What they're talking about is, do these people deserve to live?
Yep.
Do these people deserve to eat? Do they deserve to have shelter? Do they,
Yeah, and I've actually, I'll actually confront them directly. I'm like, okay, so you believe that if you're homeless, you shouldn't have the right to live? You know, they're like, well, I mean, because if that's your answer, then you should be pushing for laws just to kill them. Let's just put them in chambers and gas them. You know what I'm saying? You think the immigrant coming across the border does not have the right to live? Is that you think they should be put in this prison and starved? That's what you think should happen? Then just kill them. Right. Like if that's what you think should happen, let's find a humane way to kill them. Like this. And when you say that, people are, you know, they get all freaked out, like, that's awful. How could you say such a thing? That's exactly what you're fucking saying. You're just not making the additional leap. You're not actually following through on that thought. This is like you saying, oh, we should, you know, vegetarians are stupid. I don't believe in vegetarianism. But then when you say, oh, well, why don't you go kill that cow that you're going to have the hamburger? And they're like, well, I'm not going to do that. Well, you need to at least come to terms with the fact that you're causing that to happen. I eat meat. I'm not a vegetarian, but I come to terms with the fact that I'm killing a living thing to do that. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to morally come to terms with what you're doing, you know, and don't whitewash it. Don't disabuse yourself of this notion that you're a better person because you didn't go all the way to the end.
Well, exactly. It's like you have this ideal of, you know, whatever your ideal is. I don't want to cherry pick something, but this ideal includes you placing some, you know, like placing yourself on some moral high ground and saying that, you know, this person, because if they're poor, then they must not have worked hard enough, or that if they're an immigrant, then they must be, you know, or you know, if they came into the country illegally, then you know, they must be a criminal, or, you know, any number of things that you tell yourself these stories to make yourself feel superior in those ways. But to your point, and just that, well, both of our points, it's like you need to understand that it doesn't matter what color the person's skin is. It doesn't matter how much money that they make. It doesn't matter, you know, where they came from, what country they started in. It doesn't matter who their parents are. It doesn't matter what job they have. It really, like, none of that matters. What matters is that they're a human being, and they're another human being just like you that is on this earth for whatever reason we're here. Maybe no reason that we're here, but we're all in the same condition. Like, regardless of our environment, we're all human beings that are here, and we all have value because of that and no other reason. Yes, it's possible that you can do good things that provide value to others, but that's not your only reason for being.
Yeah, and I would, this is kind of just to put the nail in the coffin. Like, people on the right are the ones that typically have problems with this kind of thing, and people on the right are typically also religious, usually Christian. And I'm just going to throw this out there. That's exactly what your book says. Your book says we're all God's creatures and God loves us all equally. So maybe take that to heart, you know?
Thank you for listening to the F'ing Up the Ineffable podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. If you didn't, well, thanks for sticking around this long anyway. We are available on most major podcast platforms, including Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. We are currently releasing new episodes every 3 weeks on Thursdays, but hope to increase the frequency of releases in the near future. Please subscribe to us on your favorite platform to be informed when new episodes release. And also, we love feedback. Feel free to find and follow us on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, or Facebook, and let us know what you think. You can also email us at effinguptheineffable@gmail.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.